I'm Dr. Aaron Strange. And
And I'm
is
Dr. Love.
okay, Dr.
And this is Loveline
You've called Loveline.
on the Anything Podcast.
taking the first caller. So I have my face mask thing on, and the reason I'm wearing it right now is because I've been in quarantine for 3 months and I have a face for radio, but also I heard the funniest thing that I laugh at so hard. It's called a face diaper. You've heard the face diaper. It's so funny. So when I take my little thing off, here's my blue face diaper. I just thought it's so funny. There we go. So it's been 84 years.
You jumped from Italian
Yeah.
to a different
Oh,
nationality.
No. But I'm Italian.
Hey.
Yeah, my buddy Vinny Bitty Bops. So
Well, I got to say, it's actually good to be back. Yeah. And what's really nice is we played cards the other night,
Sure
which
did.
is the real cards, not the online stuff that we have posted during the whole pandemic
yeah,
bullshit.
we played the physical cards.
Yeah. So actually getting together, hanging out, having a good time, that was nice. That was a lot of fun. And yeah, now we're back and things are easing up. It's phase 3 is starting on Tuesday in this area. New York City is still in phase 1.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're one of the largest populations in the world, so
Yeah.
international hub. I'm not. So right now, all I can think about 2020 is the Ric Flair meme that's on the internet. It's just, woo! That's exactly it. That is 2020. I'm like, woo! Like, holy shit. This season of Earth is crazy.
Well, the memes, I gotta say, have been on freaking point.
They're lit.
Like when we start June, you see you have reached level 6 Jumanji. Welcome to June. They have the months of the year talking about how it's going to be different and all that. But here's the one thing that I've been seeing now. They're saying that because of the year change and the change of calendar from in the Gregorian calendar to is it that do we use the Gregorian or is it, I don't even remember. But when we did the change in the 1500s, like it was a few year gap change that they did.
Oh,
apparently.
I know nothing about this.
And it's supposed to be 8 years. So they're like, oh, it's actually supposed to be 2012 right now.
Oh.
But here's the thing when it comes to that. And so they're saying, so the Mayan calendar would say that this is the end because 2012.
That's what I remember.
But here's the problem with that whole premise is the fact that the Mayan calendar didn't change. The Mayan calendar still stayed the same. So that means when it changed its cycle in 2012 to 2013 and it reset its cycle, that means it still stayed that from day to day to year to cycle. It stayed the same because it's the Mayan calendar.
Yeah.
It's not the changes that we did when in the 1500s. So it's like when I see that, it's like, that's funny, ha 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 ha. But in actuality, no, that's not really what happens.
Yeah.
So I hate to break it, I hate to burst your bubble, but they're already 8 years into the new cycle when it comes to, or 7 years or whatever it is, total to the Mayan calendar. We're already in the new cycle. Sorry, but
Yeah.
I got to break that one
Yeah.
because that's so much fake news out there. But the memes.
Holy
shit.
The other one I saw was the aliens. We're like, we're up next. I'm so nervous.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. There's a lot of really good memes.
Well, the whole thing, yeah, but, speaking of aliens, did you hear about that signal that NASA came out with and said that they have a repeating fast radio burst from a galaxy that's located about 3 million light years away?
Yes, it's 157 days repeating.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, of course, they release it right now because everyone's going to be like, oh, my God, aliens.
Yeah,
And it's like, no, it's not going to be aliens. It's probably just like a rotating like star or something.
Yeah, the
or
last
like,
time they found the repeating thing that they couldn't figure out.
this is
where
the
it came
second.
from.
This is only the second time they found it.
So the first one, it turned out to be a rotating neutron binary star, I believe, if memory serves, which it probably doesn't. I'm probably completely wrong, but I think that it was a binary star that it was rotating around another star or something. But that
and
one was faster.
The one was spinning.
Yeah.
Like the core of the one star apparently was spinning so freaking fast, but then on top of it, the stars were in cycle around each other because they were so close at that point. So yeah, that is part of the reason why that first one, and probably this one that they just found.
Oh, I'm sure.
But they're saying it's then there was the meme. Who's the dude from Ancient Aliens? Like the one with the freaking hair.
That guy. You know, I think he has some kind of Italian name, like Gregorio or something. I gotta look it up.
What's his name though?
I don't know. I never knew his name. I just remember Aliens.
Well, they show his name, or they show him with the meme, and he's like it shows at the top. It says, "You know what 2020 needs?" And then it says underneath, "Aliens." Yeah. I'm like, oh, that is. There it is.
Did you see the Men in Black meme of him, where it's him with short hair? And they keep doing the Men in Black thing to him until his hair is giant.
No, I haven't seen that one.
That one was before this whole crazy pandemic, but it was him because for some reason his hair was normal. I don't want to say normal, but was short.
When?
And then during the beginning of the show, apparently.
No, it was always wacky. It was like.
Yeah, they got like that throughout the show. So they have this meme where because he knows about aliens and they keep Men in Blacking him, he gets crazier.
Okay, crazier. so you know, let's go with the hair thing real quick. You know how they say that like something sticks and you go with it, like you know Bert Kreischer, right?
Yes.
You know he always takes his shirt off. Like he's known as that guy. If you go to the show, he's taking his shirt off. Okay, cool. But that guy, whatever the hell his name is always known for his crazy ass hair, even from the beginning. And everyone's like, holy shit. But then you think some TV exec is like, since we score so high with your hair in terms of memory of this, we need you to grow your hair out longer.
Yeah.
And before every show and every take, we're going to have your own hairstylist who is just going to make it even crazier and crazier as the seasons go on.
Yeah.
And he's like, dude, aliens.
Is such a thing even possible, Chris?
Oh, yes.
Yes, it is.
Because you know what they use? They use horse cum.
Probably.
And you style it and get it all pointed upward, and it's like, all right, that's how it stays.
So his name is Giorgio Tsoukalos, which it's spelled with a T. Tsouk.
Here, let me see. I just want to double check. I need a picture of the dude so I can actually just verify.
Well, that's his name. Giorgio Souvlaki.
I don't know.
So he's definitely Greek.
Yeah,
right?
click the images.
Yeah, but it's definitely him.
Yeah,
I remember. Look at his
yes, there it is. There it is.
Oh, I love it. It's so funny. He's so good.
I didn't know that was his name. I thought it was something that was like, you know, it's like one of those. His name's so weird. I wonder if it's like when you call up or when a scammer calls you from India and they're like, "Hello, thank you for calling. This is George."
Yes.
Scott.
Yeah. They definitely,
dude, no, it's not.
They definitely,
what is your real name? Oh, like it was it Horrible Bosses?
Horrible Bosses.
Where he's like,
Atmanand.
Dude, Gregory.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, what's your real name? Like, and he's like, Atman.
Yeah.
And
Atmanand.
He's trying to go through it. And he's like, oh, fuck it. Just Gregory.
Atmanand.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into the crazy ass shit that's been going on for the last, let's see, 63 days that I have on my clock or something around there. Mm-hmm. So let's start with this whole pandemic, and then let's go into how things have changed in terms of some of the crazy shit that's going on. And then we'll get into this whole police reform, defunding, riot stuff. And
now, I haven't heard anything about that because I've been home. I've been quarantining and I've been separated from the world.
But you have cell phones, so
yeah. The thing I want to know is, has your priorities, your list of things in life that your brain thinks about, has your scorecard changed? Has your the weight that you give to the importance of things in life, has it changed on your perspective at all?
For me, no. I'm going to say, because I'm always being introspective, and I'm always, multiple times a year, I'm reevaluating things and seeing, what's good, what's not, what works, what doesn't. So, I mean, I've probably thought about it a little bit because it's just part of the natural way I am.
Yeah.
I think a lot of other people are reevaluating things and seeing that. I mean, we made a few decisions ourselves that has kind of spawned some like upcoming changes very soon, and that is we're going to be homesteading. So we're going to buy some land. We're going to get some. We're going to. I don't know if we're going to build or if we're going to just buy a house that with the land that fits our needs. But goodbye grass. First of all, I hate grass. I hate cutting it. I hate watering it. It's useless to me. It's a waste of time and money. So fuck grass. Goodbye. What we're going to end up doing is just do garden beds and orchard and grow our own food and stuff.
So the people, first thing when you talk about grass, the people who grew up the people that own the house a couple houses away, they had grass that is a different kind of grass that is indigenous to our area or whatever it is, the normal grass.
Let's back up right now. Yeah. Grass is not indigenous to this area.
Right. So, but the whatever the grass is that everyone has, they had a much denser, shorter grass that did not require any kind of.
Was it AstroTurf?
No, it definitely wasn't. So, it was much nicer to walk on. It was more mossy, but it was grass, but it had a much more condensed. Little blades, and they would only grow about this tall, so you'd never have to mow it, or maybe they mowed it one time. And it was nicer to walk on. It felt more spongy. And I thought to myself, why doesn't everyone have this kind of grass? You don't have to do anything to it. I don't know why they don't.
First of all, the real thing is, why do we have to even have grass anymore?
Yeah.
So do you know the history of grass? Do you know the history of the yard?
No, but I understand that people, they look at it aesthetically. A friend of mine, he was so concerned about his grass that he would have to make sure that the edges were trimmed and everything looked nice.
Get some people are absolutely insane about their grass. My next door neighbor is insane. Okay, so here's the fun part. Couple weeks, it was probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago at this point now. I was over at a friend's house about 2 doors down from me, and we were just hanging out, having a good time. And so our neighbor was out cutting his grass. 2 days prior, he was out cutting his grass.
See?
When I cut my grass, he'll either be out the day after, later that day, or the day after, because it has to be just so much under. Yeah. But I gotta say, I thought something was wrong, because I cut my grass last week on Monday. He didn't cut it until Wednesday. Or Thursday or something. So it was there was a clear, distinct line difference between mine being all trimmed and looking good.
Must have drove
and his
nuts.
was a little bit and so I'm I think maybe he's in the hospital or something. But no, some people are absolutely insane about their grass. It needs to be meticulous, and yes, I get the aesthetic aspect of it. But what I'm asking, do you know the history of grass and why we even have a yard to begin with?
No idea.
Okay. So the reason why we have a yard is when those powdery wig people in Britain, they had massive, beautiful lawns and gardens, and it was a status symbol.
Yes, for sure. The nicer your garden, for sure. Yeah.
So then it ended up coming here because obviously the 13 colonies were British owned. So it came over here, and because it came over here, you had the richer status symbol of grass.
Okay.
So it ended up just becoming part of the mainstream, even though grass around here is not indigenous.
Right.
Anyway, I don't even think grass is indigenous to the entire North American continent.
Oh, wow.
Essentially, it's just a weed. And it's a weed that we have to grow and maintain and take care of. But I hate it. I've hated it from the beginning of time. And so I see it as a time waster where you have to go out and cut your grass. Depending on the size of your yard, it could take, you might have to do it twice a week because it can grow very fast, especially in the spring, early summertime, like around now. And then it'll start drying out. It'll be brown. You have to water it days on end to get it green. And so I had the great idea. I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to pour concrete along my entire thing and just paint it green. I'd never have to cut my grass.
Yeah.
And the thing I hate doing too is I hate hedging. I hate weeding. I hate mulching. I just don't like it. I don't have time for it. I don't care. Dude, I was doing the weeding in my head. I sliced my finger from a fucking rock. And I should have gone and got a stitch, but I didn't. Yeah. And I'm like, fuck it. And I didn't want to go and get a stitch because everybody's going to get corona tested right now. And I'm like, I don't fucking want to get it. And so then I'm like, you know what? I want to get AstroTurf because I never have to take care of it. The only thing I really probably would have to do is do like an application, like a weed application to kill every weed.
Well, you know what your solution is? It's so simple, Chris. You're just going to have to move to Arizona where they don't have yards. That's what you're going to do.
Some do.
You'll have a cactus plant. Well, so the funny, ironic thing about this conversation is that I thought the same thing when I see people mowing their lawn that are excited to get up. And also, our neighbor, he would get up, and he was much more intelligent than the average human being because he always wore his protective headphones and everything. He was concerned about his hearing, and he would wear a mask and everything. I think he had an N95 for a while, but he had a real gas mask first, and that it probably wore out or broke. And then he was doing the N95 mask when he was mowing his lawn. He's like, this guy's ahead of the curve. He's got his air protection on. He's got his N95, but he was one of those people that would get up at the crack of dawn and start lawn mowing. Like, dude, we're sleeping at 7:15 in the morning.
Yeah, but so the whole thing, why I'm getting on that is I hate grass. I hate doing, the yard work maintenance because it's a waste of time. Yeah. It's endless. So like the weeding you have to do every couple of days because new little fucking things pop up, and I'm like, I can't.
Just Roundup everywhere, Chris. Roundup.
I do that, and it still fucking comes back. Sure. So the whole thing was, we decided that we wanted to start growing herbs, and that we wanted to start growing. I wanted to do peppers this year because I love peppers. So I got Hungarian peppers, jalapeno peppers, and banana peppers because I usually do the jalapeno and the banana in my salad. And then I like making stuffed hot peppers, which is amazing. And for a long time, I would go to the store and I couldn't get the Hungarian peppers because of everything going on. Plus, on top of that, with how crazy shit got with the run on food and stuff, I mean, we got most of our food okay.
We did, yeah.
For the most part. But
I think we were fortunate.
Yeah, but for the most part, like when you go in the store, it's like limit. And I'm like, you know what? I don't even want to do that. I've always wanted to have a garden. I've always wanted to be more self-sufficient. I wanted to be more self-reliant. I always wanted like solar panels because when I get an electric car, then I can charge it. I want to be able to sell back to the grid because I'm like, oh, maybe I can sell back to the grid. It's an asset at that point. I'm making money. Same thing, like, so I was just thinking of all this stuff. So all of a sudden a Facebook ad pops up and it was this book and it's called The Backyard, or it's like the self-sufficient backyard or something like that. And I messaged you, I messaged a couple of other friends and I'm like, check this out. And I'm like, I think I'm actually going to get the book. So I got the book. And so we're looking at it and it's like, that would be a lot of fun. And the way that they laid it out is it's like for a quarter acre of land that can feed you and your like a family of 4. And then you can even sell off more if you want. And I'm like, that would be perfect because I wouldn't mind doing that. I would also use my MacGyverness and think up of ways on how I could, have things done almost seamlessly or done for themselves where I don't have to do as much work.
Sure.
Like One of the things that I would probably want to do is come up with like a watering system that I can have, and it'll just take water runoff from the roof that you collect, and it'll go into the garden, and it'll feed the garden and the trees and the vines and everything. And so I really kind of fell in love with that idea.
Right.
And so did my girlfriend. And so we're in the planning stage now of where and what we're going to do. Like, we took some questions and figured out, but essentially it's like, I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, I don't have to get a lawnmower. Like, I can sell my lawnmower now.
Well, that's what was crazy to me, was watching people who were mowing their lawn. One, I'm like, this is a weirdo waste of time, but it's also very pollutant. Like, we're supposed to be worrying about the environment, and there's got to be a better way.
Yeah, the electric lawnmower that you can get. Okay. So you could get the electric lawnmower now.
Yeah, where's the power for that come from?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but that's the whole thing. But that's the veneer. Yeah. But so the whole thing is, we're like, all right, we want to do something more self-sufficient. And so we want to come up with food that we can grow ourselves, and then we're going to can it and root cellar it and take care of it. So we can try to get food for the entire year. If we produce more than what we want, we could go to a farmer's market, sell it off, and then the land also pays for itself somewhat.
Yeah.
And hopefully with us doing that, maybe it'll help other people say, oh, wow, that's a really good idea. And then they'll do that too. And then we can kind of get back to the roots where we're doing some work instead of just sitting on Netflix and just sitting in front of the TV and things like that. So I think, at least in that aspect, I think this whole pandemic with the food shortages that people were facing, stuff like that, I think that ignited the want of me to actually follow through with this self-sufficient style. And I don't want to give up, like, I'm not going to give up luxuries.
No, of course not.
I'm not giving up air conditioning. I'm not giving up internet and stuff, because, half of the stuff I do is social media, and, the podcast is internet based. The YouTube channel is internet based, things like that. So I don't want to give up that type of stuff.
So you're not going to have like an outhouse where you have to walk out in the cold to go poop.
No. The only thing what we'll probably do is do like a human waste compost, because they have that. So we'll probably end up doing something like that, where we'll take the black water and then put it to that. But that's going to be like off.
Are you going to use it to grow your vegetables?
Yeah.
Now, here's my question, Chris. If you have people over for dinner and you're like, oh, here's my good vegetables out of my garden, are you going to tell them that you use your own poop to fertilize it? Is that required?
I don't think that's actually going to be something that would come up as a question.
Unless... No, but you have. If I came over to your house for dinner and I had the most delicious peppers that you love to grow, but wouldn't you have to tell me, oh, yeah, I grew them with my own feces? Like, it just seems like something that someone would want to know. The reason I bring that up is because there's a movie called The Big Short.
Yeah, but
and Brad Pitt is like, oh yeah, I grew these all myself, and I used my own, it's my own compost to make them, and the dudes eating the food are like,
Yeah, but here, okay, well, your own compost is not human waste compost, because that could just be leftover organic materials.
When you're eating food, it's manure anyway.
Manure has shit in it. Yeah, like, whether it comes from a human or an animal, it still has shit in it. So every time you take peat moss or you take some sort of soil or anything like that that's designed for like that, that has poop in it. Yeah, so if you don't have gloves on, you are literally playing in poo.
Yep, for sure.
So, yeah, it's it's a different concept, but like I said, I want to. It's more environmentally friendly, because then you're not. First of all, because we're not going to be tied into the sewer system. We're going to be our own. So for like rain runoff and that, this area experiences a lot of runoff, and like there's a county organization that actually tries to get people to buy rainwater catch systems
Right.
to guard for their gardening, so it can help stop the amount of runoff into the streams with the pollution and all that.
So we always hear, well, I've heard stories of, oh, well, this person tried to live off the grid and the state came in and they couldn't do it. And they said that you can't have your windmill and you can't have your rain barrels. And there's different stories about different people. Is there an issue with, do you have to hook into the sewer system? Do you have to get the city's water? Could you use your own rainwater? Do you have to get the electric grid?
No, none of that stuff. So there are areas in our country that say, no, you cannot collect rainwater. There are actually laws against collecting rainwater on your roof.
Okay.
There is actually laws against it. Like, I think it's in Colorado is one of them, one of the states. There's a few states that have that in there.
Do they have a good reason for doing that?
I
Because found that
I don't know.
whenever there's rules, for example, I know that in some foreign countries, they don't have a source of fresh water. So their roof basins are the water. But the problem is because it's a tropical climate, it grows bacteria. And people who don't live there and are not used to the bacteria risk getting sick when they go there. So
yeah, well, that's why you filter out your water when you're doing it. Of
course, but if you're in a third world
I
country,
can't answer those questions because I don't live in that area.
Right.
So I don't know.
Well, that's my experience. There's always a good reason why they have these rules. It's not like, oh, we're trying to oppress you. You can't have a windmill.
Some people might be like that.
Maybe.
Some laws are like that. Let's be real.
For sure.
So some laws actually are like that. I don't know the reason why they say you can't collect rainwater. I think it's absolutely absurd and ridiculous. Now, it could be something where they live in an area where it's drought prone.
Maybe.
And they're trying to get the runoff so then it can go into the reservoirs and things like that. But this is Colorado. You're in the fucking mountains where there's 19 feet of snow that falls. Yeah. And then every spring, you literally have massive amounts of runoff. Yeah. And it goes into the reservoirs. So, like, I don't understand that. But again, I don't live in that area, so I don't really care. And, I'm not filling my head with that crap. Yeah. No, you don't have to be grid tied in. Okay. You can have your own. You can have your own system that's standalone. And you can have a generator if you want. You can have a windmill if it meets criteria. Windmills are very tricky because sometimes there's height regulations and things depending on where you are. If it's neighbors and stuff, you can run into issues like that. Solar really has no regulations except for how it has to be put together and tied in. But you could do a grid tie-in, which means any power that you produce that's in excess of what you use, you sell it back to the grid. Right. And there's actually laws in some areas that require these companies to buy it back. Right. So it's not in every place that'll have that, but most places I think have some sort of law that says that the utilities have to purchase it back if there's more being produced.
Well, I think the solution for you then, Chris, I think is to build yourself an Earth ship. Have you ever seen an Earth ship?
Is this the SpaceX trip?
No, you don't know about the Earth ships?
Wow.
So there are people, and it's not just a few people. There's a lot of people who build these homes that are semi-close to what you're trying to accomplish, but what they're using is recycled materials. For example,
I'm not doing that. No, I'm not doing that.
One of the ones that I was watching was a nice young girl in Arizona, and she used a lot of tires because you know that we have an epidemic with what to do with all the used tires.
Some of those houses that they do, a lot of that's in the desert that they do.
For sure.
And there's good reason for it. So they can do it so it stays cool in the summer and warm in the winter.
They did, yeah.
And so things like tires, plastic bottles, all that stuff actually works really well. Yeah. And you usually use clay or the mud that's right there.
That's what they were doing.
And then, no, I mean, we're doing a house that's still going to be in like a suburban setting. We're not going like... It might be an urban or suburban setting. It's still going to be in the area. So the problem where you hear people saying like, oh, I can't build my house here or whatever, the regulations. That's because it's like 100 miles from absolute nowhere. And so, and like, I can understand why they're like, oh, you can't live out there, you can't do this, or because it's like if you need if you need emergency services, they will not be able to get there in time.
Yeah, for sure.
But for you to say, as a government official or whoever, either being in a state or province or wherever it might be, and they say, no, you can't live there, you can't build that there, you can't do that. Well, I think that's all bullshit, because it's like, if they want to live in the middle of fucking nowhere doing, if they're going to have their own homestead or be self-sufficient or, live off the land, then what the fuck does it matter to you?
Well, the Earthship girl that I watched, she was way out in the desert. And what was very interesting is there's a guy who is a professional at building them, has been building them for his whole life. So she called him up, and they're very good at the way that air flows. So they would put pipes underneath the spaceship, the Earthship, that would cool the house when it needed to be cooled. And they had everything measured out. The windows would go here in a special spot so that it would get this temperature. And they were had it down to a science.
And stuff like that. Yeah.
And the water, their water was recycled. They had a indoor plant area where it was inside the home, but it was outside the general area where, the brown water went. They weren't, there was something with the black water that there is regulations where they're saying that you have to have your well far enough away from from the black water. And there were rules, which makes sense.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're going to want to keep, like, if we do a black water or like a human compost or something like that, you want to keep it as far away from your water supply. And I mean, I'd like to have well water or something because, then whatever. But I'd also wouldn't mind doing rainwater collection and getting giant cisterns that can, fill up. And then I have hundreds or thousands of gallons that will go towards, all the garden and everything, because they take a lot of water. So you want to make sure you keep it watered.
Have you ever seen Alaska, The Last Frontier?
I've watched like a little bit of it, but nothing. I've never gotten into those shows.
So there were two different types of shows. There's Alaska, The Last Frontier, and then there was another family that was the Bush people.
Yeah, or the Bush people or whatever.
Alaska,
Bush.
That's what it was, the Alaskan Bush people. Alaska, The Last Frontier, the relative had come escaping the war, I think from Sweden or Europe somewhere. He came to Alaska, literally went up on the beach, grabbed a chunk of coal, started a fire, started hatching it down trees, built himself a homestead to escape the war.
Yeah.
Owned tons of property in Alaska because he's the first person there. Left it to his kids, who are now the owners of the property. So they already have a homestead, and they have cows and they have things like that, hundreds of acres that they own along this beach. And every year they have to move the cows from one end to the other, and it's a whole thing. So then now they're down to the third generation, but exactly what you said, they have homes that are nice, and it's not like living, an austere lifestyle, but they try to avoid using money as much as possible. And they're all very skilled. They're very skilled going, well, we have to catch this much salmon to be able to make it through the wintertime. Yeah. And we have to.
Well, they've also been doing it for many years.
For their whole lives.
Exactly how much you need.
Exactly.
Like because we're just literally like next year, because it's too late for this year to do that already. Yeah. But going into next year, we're going to really start that. So some of the things we're going to have to plant and get ready because it's an annual or perennial, depending on how you grow it or whatever it is. So some of the things are going to be done at the end of this year, going into next year, because the zone where we're at only allows for that. And then we're going to transition into getting everything done next year. Yeah. But like I said, we're not, I mean, at least the stigma seems like when you say I'm going to build a homestead or be self-sufficient or something like that, you think you're going to be like off in the fucking woods.
No, so I was going to
being-
send you a picture of Little House on the Prairie that I saw yesterday. It was like, I'm sure remember that show.
Yeah.
I was like, this is going to be you and your family. I was going to send
No,
it to
no,
you.
no. Like I said, the only
You're not
difference-
going to live like Amish?
No,
Okay.
no. The only difference is I'd love to build a steel house, or a steel structure, because they're fucking cheap.
Yeah.
So like you can get like a 50 by 100 foot steel structure, which is 5,000 square feet, and you can do half of it as a house, like a 2-story house, or that right there, if you did it that way, is like almost 5,000 square feet. Yeah. And then the other half you can use as a workshop. You can use as a lot of different things that you might be doing. Maybe I grow a bunch of vines or something, and I have a lot of grapes. I can do a little vineyard or something.
Well, the interesting thing is that agriculture, they pretty much have a good idea of how much space you need per human. And I was interested to find out that it takes this, you need an acre of food for this, or an acre of land for this much food for this long. Have you looked into how much any of that, how much land you need to grow enough peppers to get through the year? Like, do you have anything?
Well,
how many chickens do you need per year?
The book that I'm reading, that one that I sent you, says you can feed a family of 4 on a 1/4 acre of land.
Oh, yeah.
If you do it the right, you do it the right way. So you have to, one of the things that they do in there is there's trellises. So when you have a type of vegetable or some sort of food item that can grow upward, you're getting more square footage,
for sure,
because you're having it grow up.
Well,
so there's a lot of different things in that aspect, but so it's surprising how much food you can actually feed yourself on a small acre, or a small plot of land, because I was always under the impression that one person needs 1 acre of food. And I heard that a long time ago. And I'm like, that's a lot of food to go through because like an acre is a very good size plot. And it's like, would I really go through that amount? And it's like, no.
Right.
So then when I looked at this book, and they're like, yeah, we set this book up so it will be, if you have a family of 4, which is the average in America is a family of 4, you can live off of the food on a 1/4 acre. If you follow these couple of directions, you can change it and do it how you want. And because, there's a lot of food that I don't want to eat.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to grow that. There's no point in growing it.
Sure.
But then it's going to be into the processing and the canning and the prolonging of things. So then you're getting fresh fruits and vegetables from when they mature up until, you got to do the process to extend their life. So then you can go through the year.
Yeah.
But you can do a lot of different things like that. And so I just want to do stuff like that where, it's nice. I want to feed myself. And then what's nice about that is you're getting out more. You're doing more things. It's like I said, you're not sitting in front of the TV. You're actually, enjoying what you're doing. You're producing something. So that's going to feel really rewarding on top of it. And it's just going to be a really, I think, good experience. And not only that, for kids, like if they grow up in that, they're going to know all that. So they're going to have all that life experience and knowledge, which if something happens, and it's more real today than ever, because literally we're like, oh, we got to shut down for 2 weeks. Cool. And 3 months later, we're still half shut down.
Yeah. And you're like, well, I'm used to this. I get all my food and I grow it and store it and then catch it for this winter. I don't need to shut down because I have everything I need.
Yeah. But what happens if something happened to the food supply? It's very, very fine. And we saw that.
Sure
like
did.
I said, for the most part, we were okay.
Yeah, we're fortunate.
But a lot of people couldn't find some food. And a lot of people couldn't find toilet paper for a little while. Yeah. I don't know why. But there's a lot of things there that if something happened then you're going to be able to kind of be a little bit more prepared in terms of, well, I don't need to really worry about something happening like that. And then what's going on in the political unrest around the world right now, and the social unrest, with all these riots and, you know, Seattle being taken over in a block, a 6-block radius called Chaz.
Well, the other thing that is interesting to me is there's techniques and customs that are lost because of modern society. For example, I saw the craziest thing on the internet where a guy had a little wooden, like I would like to say the end of a broomstick, but it looked a little bit thicker, and it
Like
was
a
just
shiv?
a piece of wood. It was a round piece of wood, and it had all these notches cut in it. And all he did was hold it into the ground, into the dirt in the backyard, and start rubbing another piece of wood down that grooved thing so it vibrated into the ground, and all these worms start coming up out of the ground. It's a way to catch worms.
Oh, okay.
And I was
That's
like, this
cool.
is the craziest thing ever. And the worms coming out. So apparently
And then he goes fishing.
that's what he was doing. Yeah. And he's with his little kid showing him how to catch worms with this little thing going, you know, and the kid's like, oh my God. And there's tons of worms coming out. Apparently it tricks the worms into thinking like it's raining or something.
Oh, so it's almost like a rain stick or
I
something?
think so. I don't know how what the worms think of why they come out of the ground, but I think the vibration or the noise makes the worms think that it's raining or something. So all of a sudden, all these
Yeah, if
worms
they don't
start-
get out, they
Yeah.
drown.
I'm like,
They're
this
like,
is the craziest thing ever. I've been buying worms. Like, I know there's other ways to catch worms, but like, this is nuts. And I think that those things are the homesteading ways of how to grow food, how to catch food are lost in modern. I would have no idea how to catch something or kill it. I would figure it out, but I wouldn't know how to process it so that I could eat it. There's a great movie called Into the Wild where
Well, that actually, when you talk about the food too, that's a whole nother thing that I really wasn't thinking. But one of the things too is if we get enough crop and we form a relationship with another person who says who deals with chickens or cow, you might be able to barter with them and say, oh, they'll give us half a cow or something.
Oh, yeah.
And we give you X amount of food.
well, that's how the last frontier worked.
Well, but the cool thing about that is then you get your meat and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So because we're not planning on getting a large chunk of land
Right.
where we can have, you know, cow or goat or anything like that.
Get a lot of
We'll
chickens.
probably have chickens. Yes, we might do rabbits. I'm not sure yet with that, but rabbit and chicken, if you do it right, that can feed you enough.
Yeah,
and
for
then
sure.
if you want to get like a quarter of a cow, you can, you know, extend that quarter of a cow for an entire year. Or if you go and hunt and you get like an elk or something, that's going to probably feed you for a long time.
See, I would have no idea about farming, how to keep your crops growing, about hunting. There's
That's why you learn.
Yeah, well, there's a great movie called Into the Wild, and it was a book, and a guy actually really did this, a kid, where I can't remember whether he graduated college or didn't, but he was supposed to go to college, and he decided that he was just going to go across the country, ended up in Alaska, and there's a famous bus that he lived in, and he actually died in the bus because he ate the wrong kind of plant. He had a little book, and one plant in the book looked like another plant. The one was poisonous and the other one wasn't. He ate it and he died. But before that, I think he killed either a moose or a bear or something, but he couldn't process it in time to keep all the bugs off of it. So it's things that you wouldn't think about. That's like, okay, you only have a limited amount of time to do this, and you've got to get it either underground or somewhere away, or that your meat is going to go bad. The whole thing is crazy. So it's like all of that, I think, is lost when I don't know how to do anything.
But most people don't. And like, I'm not saying I know what to do either, because I only know, you know, a few things. And I'm guaranteeing you I'm going to fuck up. The other thing what we might do down the road too, this is after things have been established and get going, and that we might try to do like an aquaponic system where you have your own little environment, which is plants, and then you have fish,
those are
and they
cool.
cycle through.
Oh, yeah.
So like
seen 'em.
the plants feed the
And the fish poop feed the plants.
The fish feed the plants. So you have this nice little thing.
Well, what's interesting about that is that you're going to build like a bunker, right? That's what you would use. You
know what I
use
want?
fish and you don't need a very big area for the fish. Just one of those plastic thing, and your fish can live in that, and they feed the plants, and the plants feed the fish. It's a little
Dude,
ecosystem.
speaking of a
enough
bunker,
to live on. Yeah.
Speaking of a bunker,
Yeah.
so I was watching, when Doomsday Preppers and all that shit was
Yes, I've
like
seen
real
it.
popular.
Yeah.
Oh my god! So I
never watched
loved
it, but-
watching that show. I like the show itself for some of the things that it taught, because it did teach how to do certain things,
Yeah.
or it did give you a little bit more information. So if you ever did need something,
Yeah.
but some of the shit that people were saying, like, oh my God, I'm worried about this or this. And it's like,
Yeah.
dude, that's really not going to happen.
Yeah.
And if it does, it's not going to be anywhere near as bad as that.
Right.
And the reason why is because you're going to have most people coming together
Yeah.
instead of tearing each other apart. Although how things are right now does have me questioning that just a little
Yeah,
bit.
I get it. Yeah.
But I mean, I liked watching the show because you learned a lot of different things, and they did teach things here and there
Yeah.
in between all the crazies.
Yeah.
And I mean, the crazy was the reason why people were watching it. Let's be real. But again, like I said, there were little tricks that people would say and tell in that, and it's like that's a really good life learning
Right.
lesson to know in case you ever were in a situation that could apply to anything.
Well, that's why I liked watching Alaska: The Last Frontier, because their lifestyle was such a different lifestyle than mine.
It's so basic.
And they knew everything. Like the kids just knew everything about, you need to know how to weld that. You want to use this kind. They knew how to weld. They knew how to fish. They knew how to hunt. They knew how to do everything. The funniest thing was one or two of them didn't have an outhouse for a long time, or didn't have a toilet or running water. So they would have to get on their little four-wheeler and go fill up water like either every day or once a week or something, and then go use an outhouse. And finally, I think she got pregnant or something. You're like, we have to have plumbing now. So they ran running water into the home and then got a toilet. But the thing that was blowing your mind is like, people poop inside their houses. Like, they couldn't grasp. It was so funny. Then the thing that really blew my mind is either the fourth or the fifth season of me watching that show. All of a sudden there was a big reveal, like, we're going to have a special guest is coming. It turns out to be the singer Jewel, it's her family.
Oh, shit.
And they kept such a good secret of not telling that was her family. I remember her from growing up.
Yeah.
I saw her perform
She's
at
hot.
Woodstock.
Or she was.
Yeah,
I don't know if
she's
she still
attractive
is,
blonde
but-
chick. Yeah. So I saw her perform at Woodstock, and I remember her story, and it turns out to be her family. So for like 3 or 4 or 5 seasons, I'm watching them, and then all of a sudden Jewel is there, and I'm like, oh, her story completely clicks now about, and she had issues with her father, something made up with them. But we're talking about people like who are in their 60s and 70s who are literally riding the range and rounding up cows on their horses, camping in cabins. Such a different lifestyle than mine.
Well, I mean, I'm not looking to learn at all.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
There's
So
there's
who
no
could?
way that you could,
Yeah.
because
You have
the
to
only
start
way
as
you
a
could,
kid.
like, first of all, you can't do. Let's be real. You can't be 100% self-sufficient. There's absolutely no way, because there's too much information and too many things that you wouldn't be able to do yourself, or even a few people, like a small family.
Yeah.
You would need multiple families doing multiple things. And that's why if you see like compounds or something, like you'll see, a couple of people from the family doing this, a couple of people from the family doing that. And you'd see them blend back and forth, but you'd have a large group of people ending up where they could do all of that stuff. But in actuality, you're not going to be able to learn it all. So like, I'm not planning on that. Sure. I'm going to try to do as much as I can, and then take what I know and expand outward, and then do stuff like that.
That's awesome, man.
But and like I said, I'm not giving up all the modern amenities and stuff. It's just I want to be more self-sufficient. I also think that doing something like that would be more green in terms of you're not, it's literally farm fresh to table all in your property. So there's no, I'm going to go as pesticide free as I can.
Yeah.
So I'll have like a bat house in the back. I'll have, ladybugs and stuff like that that will take care of all the pests. And then one of the big things too is, trying to keep things protected from like rabbit and squirrel and stuff like that. So like having a fence around the property enough where, you're going to be able to protect it a lot better from stuff like that. Even maybe coyote, because the chickens would come. I'm more, whether I, process the chickens or not.
Right.
I'm not sure if that's what I'm going to do or if we're just going to do eggs.
Yeah.
And get enough eggs because I eat a lot. And that was, that was my big thing this whole time too with the pandemic. They're like, oh, don't go out, stay inside as much as you can.
Yeah.
And like for me, I didn't really give a fuck first of all, but I was making a joke because it's like I eat 6 eggs a day and they would limit you to 1 dozen eggs when you went to the store.
Right.
And it's like, all right, first of all, let's see here. Do you want me to eat, or do you want me to come in every other day to get eggs?
Yeah.
Or do you want me to get enough eggs so I only have to come in here maybe once a week?
Exactly. Yeah.
So how do you want to play this?
Right.
And so, I mean, getting enough eggs, because, I eat 6 a day.
Yeah.
The kid right now eats 2 a day. And, so we go through a lot of eggs. And so I think that's kind of the big thing, because if I can have fresh eggs, if I can have that, then like I said, it cuts down on the pesticides. I know what food I'm eating. I know where it was grown, so I know it's going to be good. I know that like the E. coli breakouts and shit like that is going to be severely limited.
Yeah.
All that stuff is going to be very, very limited in terms of that, but it's also going to be good because then you're not picking something that's extremely not even ripened yet,
Right.
putting it on a truck, going from point A to warehouse to store, then to you to when you eat it, which that whole process is very unclean.
Yeah. Or a lot of our produce is, it's grown last year, frozen in a warehouse, shipped from overseas, from who knows where, and they do have country of origin on it. But I'm very interested in, when you talk about homesteading, or I'm not so much interested in going backwards, like living like Amish.
Fuck no.
What I'm interested in is technology making the quality of life for people who want to live a natural life that is either, they keep saying neutral or gives back to the environment. That's what I'm interested in. That doesn't mean that I don't have to have the comforts of living life, for example, air conditioning. What I'm interested in is technology that makes that environmentally friendly.
Well, there's plenty of ways to do it.
Yeah,
it's just
for
a
sure.
matter of if we're going to. But see, the whole problem I have when it comes down to saying, being environmentally friendly, yes, that's a good thing to do. Don't get me wrong. But the problem that I see all over the place is that it's like you and I have to be so environmentally conscious because we're the problem.
Yeah.
The cow farts are the problem.
Yeah, no.
And it's like, no, it's a very, very small and minute part
It's
of the
cumulative.
problem. And yes, it's good to care and do what you can do, but it's big corporations
for sure.
that are the bulk majority of the problem. And they're like, oh, no, it's your car, being in your car, and it's you doing that. And it's like, no, you people are the ones who are causing the problem, and you aren't doing anything about it. And, if we put restrictions on stuff like that, or used technology in terms of combating how they pollute, and, clearing up all these smog dense cities, then all of a sudden it's like,
So
Wow.
here's a great example. In some ways, the United States tries to lead in green energy. There's a lot of countries that are doing much better, but we're not
Yeah,
the
but
worst.
it's also, you got to remember, it's also the amount of population that we
sure.
have and the size that plays a major factor into it compared to some of
And
the
our
other
country
countries.
is a gigantic polluter. But if you take a country like India or China, who are much
Less
worse,
regulated.
yeah, but they're worse polluters than we are.
Much.
Yeah. So here is the issue is that if you are going to buy a product, your company, like, oh, well, I could buy this product from the United States that costs $100 per unit, or I could buy a product from either India or China that costs $10 per unit. Of course, you're going to buy the $10 per unit item, not realizing that the damage to the environment overall is more than just paying the $100 to have the more conscious item. But how do you, if you're a country like the United States where you're saying, well, we're a polluter, but you're a worse polluter and you're not even doing anything to regulate, but you're still producing the goods. And if we can't compete with that, how is a world power do you get those countries to clean up your act? So then it comes to being the United States saying, well, we have to compete economically, so maybe we should roll back our environmental rules so that we can compete economically with these countries that are high pollutant. What's the solution? I don't know what to do about it. What would you do about it? Nobody knows. So
I mean, there is actually things that you can do. And the biggest thing is technology.
yeah, I'm a huge advocate.
There are ways that you can create a greener, a greener company.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's going to cost a little more upfront, but over its lifetime, it's going to be a lot less damage to the government, to the world itself. And then you're also your cost of product, your $10 per unit might really only end up going to $12 per unit.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And it's like you can take these little steps that if you implemented that stuff
Right.
and added it to your arsenal for creating this, then you're going to be able to do that.
Exactly.
I mean, every other animal in the world lives within its means in the environment it's around, except for the beaver. I mean,
Well, there's a lot of animals.
Beavers
There's a lot of animals that they're invasive and they take over every area. If anything that can will, but they don't have the mind power, and the numbers that we have.
Nature does have a good check and balance.
Well, that's
system
what's
that goes
happening
on.
right now for sure. We're seeing it right now.
Well, one can argue that we are a virus as well. So, that whole Matrix scene,
It's real.
is pretty legit.
Well, I always think of if you've seen the movie The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Which one?
All of them. There's a part in one of them where he's like, "There's not going to be a Shire to go back to if we don't."
I think that was the Two Towers.
Yeah, and it's true when you think of the environment. I went to Glen Falls today to get out in nature and an environment, and it's interesting that that's in a city, that there's a beautiful area. I realized something.
Well, what about Central Park?
Yeah, that's
in
a good
New York
point.
City.
Yep. Well, I'm going there tomorrow. So the interesting thing when I was walking out of the park was that someone had found a turtle in a little pond there, and they were so excited. Oh my God, a turtle. And she said, well, I remember seeing butterflies, but I don't remember that there was even turtles. Then I realized there aren't butterflies. Like I'm noticing that from when I was a kid, it seemed like there were a lot more life. Like I remember you couldn't leave your drink out because bees would come over, or there'd be bees by the garbage can. I don't remember. I've seen less there were no butterflies anywhere. I remember one year there were frogs everywhere in our neighborhood. And like jumping everywhere because the pond, there was a pond that grew in our backyard. So I don't see the volume of animals, and I think there has been a decrease, and they're counting the numbers saying, yes, there's a decrease in bees, a decrease in.
Well, there's a decrease, but there's also, as we continue expanding our area, it's pushing them out more and more.
Yeah.
Because if you go back to the time when you were growing up and you look at how things were in terms of houses, businesses,
Yeah.
companies around that
just
particular
less.
area, there was a lot less. And so, yeah, you had more life at that point because you weren't we weren't pushing them back further and further.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the thing that you're seeing. So you're seeing less natural habitat for them to be able to, grow and thrive and reproduce.
But even in a park where there should be like some bugs, there's no bugs. Like there's no butterflies, no bees. Where are all these things? And it's starting to be concerning.
I'll tell you why. It's the contrails and the fucking planes.
Definitely.
They were right.
They're spraying chemicals on us, man.
Well, that would explain it. Think about it. That stuff gets in the air, and then all of a sudden
Chris,
we're breathing it in.
No,
they're dying.
Yeah, it doesn't kill the bugs. It controls your mind. Everybody knows that.
Yeah, but it's controlling them to suicide themselves.
Yeah,
they're like, ah!
I remember after the events of September 11th, 2001, they did studies about air traffic. I wonder if people are monitoring the air traffic now because everyone's been home. And it would be...
Planes have been a lot less.
Yeah.
They've been a lot less. But I mean, a lot of things have been canceled, but not everything. I mean, there's still quite a bit of plane. I think, I don't know what the number, maybe 25%, but don't quote me.
It's definitely a lot less. I live by the airport and when I first moved, there's less, but but I think all of us have to be much more concerned about the environment because there are a lot of people out there that have no...
I think we just need to trigger the fucking corporations into doing something different.
I agree with you.
Because that would cut down such a majority of things.
Yeah.
But that is the biggest.
Yeah.
And then, taking into account some of the changes that people are working on and some of the things that they're inventing and that it's clearly able to do that. And it's like, why don't you? Oh, because we already have the factory and retrofitting.
That's exactly why.
Costs us millions of dollars.
Right.
Well, you know what? That would probably be a good thing because then when you come out and you say, we helped clean up, we did our part, well, you're probably going to appeal to a lot of people. Oh, whoop-de-doo. Instead of paying $10, I got to pay $12.
Well, you know what? I don't even
normal
think
inflation.
That would be because if you add in the cost of people's healthcare from pollution, and not eating healthy food, breathing in toxic air, the damage that it does to the environment, or technically you could probably add in the cost of like Superfund sites and things like that, where, there's been chemicals that are just buried everywhere. If you could somehow explain to companies the overall cost, like
they don't care.
They don't care.
Because the biggest thing, well, first of all, it's the issue with fiduciary responsibility when you're talking about certain companies, because one, you're thinking profit and you're thinking about your shareholders.
Yeah.
And this is a global thing. But then also on top of it, you are, trying to compete on a global stage so you can be the place that people turn to.
Right.
And you would be considered the superior. And so I wouldn't say the U.S. is that because we haven't been producing things nowhere near as much as other countries have. So that we can't even say
a whole other problem to talk about.
Yeah. But so, I mean, there's a lot of issues there. But I mean, going back, if you can do your own part, cool. And I just think that they need to quit the bullshit tune saying that it's our issue,
right?
Or we're the reason why. When I'm sorry, but a fucking plastic bag, a reusable, a one-time use plastic bag that most people end up reusing anyways. So it's usually a multi-use plastic bag, but something like that is not a problem comparative to
no, it's not.
What we could actually do when it comes to companies changing their stuff.
Well, that's how I felt about contributing factors. I always use this thing as an example. I used to smoke cigarettes. It was a horrible habit I picked up. And there were some people who took the approach to where, well, once I started to actually really start to be concerned with my health and smoking was always a dirty, horrible habit anyway, but it's an addiction and a habit, right? And it costs money. You smell bad. It's bad for your health. We all know that. So when I used to smoke,
Not unless you get the grapefruit vapes.
well, when people were, well, that's a perfect example. So when I switched to the vape, people go, well, why don't you just smoke cigarettes? It's the same thing. Like, well, it's not the same thing. The vaping, you know, for me, my own experience, it was a little bit healthier. I could smell again. I didn't have the lung congestion. But even because I vaped, then
Why didn't you just do regular tobacco?
well, then people would say, well, why are you eating healthy? Or why are you exercising? You smoke, right? And I go, well, just because I smoke does not mean that I should be, you know, completely abandon my health. I should eat donuts every day and be like, oh, I already smoke. It's a contributing factor. And that's how I feel about plastic bags. We should be concerned with the amount of plastic that we're putting in the environment. But you're right. In the overall scheme of things, they shouldn't be producing the plastic bags. They should be coming up with things that are recyclable. And
Or the fact that we could just fucking legalize hemp and start using hemp plastic bag, because that shit breaks down.
well, that's what I'm saying. So, but you can
also-
buy 1,000 plastic
here's-
bags for a penny, and when you could buy only 10 hemp
Yeah, but
bags.
here's the other thing. They also have, I think it's a worm or something that can now that can break down plastic.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like if you just do that stuff, and then like the biggest thing that I think is a major problem is waste management companies. They just fucking pile everything together and call it a fucking day. And they're like, oh yeah, we're just going to take it to the dump and then throw it away.
Right.
But no, you should be breaking open the trash bag. You should be sorting the trash. You should be taking out the organic stuff and shipping that somewhere, because guess what? You could make money doing that.
Yeah.
Then you could take the cardboard and the paper and that and ship that off somewhere.
Right.
You could take the plastics and ship that off somewhere, because you can reuse plastics.
That's
Some you can, and then others take the plastic that can't be recycled and go somewhere else with it. But
well,
then
that's where I am. Is like I'm a huge advocate in technology. Technology is going to solve any problem. I'm a
yeah,
big
but it
advocate.
also
of
is
that.
going to create some problems as well.
Of
too,
course.
on
For
the way.
example, if you could modify a bacteria, let's say, right, and all of a sudden you can modify that bacteria to produce, let's say, some kind of gasoline, right? So
we'd have that.
Yeah.
LG.
yeah, they have
do that.
But all of a sudden that bacteria gets into the ocean and there's no natural predators or anything. It just takes over, right? There's unforeseen side effects to some things. But
I mean,
Yeah.
anytime you're doing something new,
Yeah, of course.
let's be real. So
we have to be very
you
careful.
don't know what could happen
Exactly.
because the unforeseen. I mean, even some of the things that we stumbled upon,
Yeah.
was unforeseen.
Yeah, for sure.
And it just was a good benefit.
Yeah.
But imagine the countless benefits or the countless non-benefits or unbenefit things that technology produces as
when
well, and that we come across. And it's like, you can't, the whole thing is you can't necessarily say with certainty, because you could be like, okay, this is for this, and this, but that's one or a few minds thinking about that particular thing. Then when it's released or whatever, however it is, then you have the masses of the minds thinking about it, and you have it in ways, or you have something that is being thought of in ways that you never assumed, you never thought. And so you have even different unforeseen consequences coming. And so it's, I mean, obviously it's this limbo that we got to play.
So here's my question. You had mentioned waste management. We'll use that as an example. So first of all, we have to stop producing plastic is just stop it. We'll figure something else out to
Hello,
use.
hemp.
Yeah. But again, are you going
Hemp
to pay
plastic.
are you going to pay $5 for that bottle so that it's made out of hemp and biodegradable, or are you going to pay $1 for it? Right? That's what the
Who
problem
said it was going to cost any more? That's the common misconception, is that it does not cost that much more, because how rapid hemp actually grows. So no, that's not really going to.
Okay, well, that's why they don't do it, because they're not going to spend, let's say, even 2 cents more. They're not even going to spend 2 cents more to buy that biodegradable product. But if you could explain to a company, like, look, the pollution that comes from producing the oil to put into that plastic, and the overall net pollution is going to cost all of us in the long run much more than paying 2 cents extra for a bite.
That's the thing. They don't care.
Right. So here's another thing. If you're talking about waste management, where you want to take everything that you can possibly throw away, right? You could theoretically, using chemistry, find a way to break down almost anything. They're working on being able to break down bottles back into their elements to be able to recycle them and use them to take the oil out of them and take the lipids out of that, working on it, right? And there's a lot of different ways to do recycle or try to reuse a lot of different plastics. Again, all costs money. People are researching it. So the other solution is to try to use a product that costs more that's biodegradable. But if you take a waste management and you actually use science and chemistry to be able to much more recycle things back down to their elements. You're using machines to sort out things, just like you said, and putting all of the, organic material here and using it as composting, which some people do, but much more in depth than that. And you're breaking everything down to be able to reuse it. And you're also conscious about not producing things that pollute and that you can't reuse. Who's going to pay for all that? You have to have. That's what the real problem is people aren't realizing that the damage that we're doing in the long run is costing all of us. When you talk about healthcare, pollution, the environment.
Here's the issue, though, that you're not realizing is you, as a waste management company, if they started separating out these things, you can make money off of the trash that's coming in instead of just putting it into the dump.
Yeah, and they do.
And as new technology does come available for more and more things that would make new life useful out of that garbage, then implement it, because that's going to be a big
where the
thing.
gap is. They're not doing that.
Some of the largest contributors to greenhouse gases is dump sites. The amount of methane that they produce, when you could literally go in there, start breaking down all of the trash and sorting it out and doing different things on it should go here or here or here,
right.
And then it goes out, it's reproduced or repurposed or changed or broken down or composted or whatever it might be. And so I think that's one of the biggest things. I think one of the things that we should look at doing is, okay, if dump sites are the biggest contributor, we should look at literally going in them and seeing what we can do.
They tap them for the methane. Do that. They do tap them for the methane, but the garbage shouldn't even get to that point.
That's what I'm saying. But what do you out do of the garbage that's already there, that's where you got to go back and say, okay, well, now we're going to go back in. We're going to start taking out this garbage. We're going to sort it through piece by piece, because this stuff isn't ever going to break down in this way for thousands of years. Right. But we have a way that we can do it in a much shorter time frame, or repurpose it or redo it. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, now we're being proactive. And then if you start to slowly take away these dumps, and hey, guess what? Now all that methane that was being produced from them goes away, because all of a sudden we just emptied our dump down to nothing.
So let's say you go to the dump. And you'll use plastic bags as an example, because they don't break down. So you go into the dump, you dig up all the stuff, and you get all the plastic bags, right? And you sort them out and you get all the plastic bags. Then you use technology, maybe the enzyme that you're talking about that breaks down the plastic. You grow the enzyme, and then you put it on the plastic. The enzyme breaks the plastic down into things that you could either put in somewhere that either degrade, or you could maybe use it for something. The issue is two things. One, some of that stuff they can't do anything with, but also who pays the person to go dig up all of those plastic bags, and then who pays the person to grow the enzymes, use all that technology that makes the enzymes to put on the plastic bags.
No. Here's the thing, because you got to remember, what's in that dump site is a bunch of shit.
Yeah.
All across the spectrum.
Right.
And when we started putting things into dumps, we just threw shit into dumps. There was nothing being reused. So there's billions of dollars sitting in those dumps.
Okay, well that's
So
where
that-
we have to figure out, because right now the view is that you can't get your investment out of those dumps. You can't take 100,000 plastic bags, and the amount of energy that you would use to
but
either
if
recycle
you're
them
just-
or break
here's the
them
thing.
down,
No. Here's
you're
the thing.
not getting your money out of it.
Look, if you're just going in and finding plastic bags,
well, I'm just
that's
using an
not it.
example.
What I'm saying is you take the whole dump,
Yeah.
you sort through everything and say, all right, well, this can go there, this can go there, this can go there, this can go there. Like like
here's a golf club.
goes on A line, B goes on B line, C goes on C line, D goes on D line, all the way down. And then all of a sudden, as that dump becomes smaller and smaller in the amount of shit that's in it, then all of a sudden it pays, like, okay, well, we want all the cardboard. We want all the paper.
Yeah, well, they
And
do that.
Pay, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And they pay you for that. So it's
They already
like, all
do
right.
that.
That's why I'm giving the example of that. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So out of all of the things that before they had a useful purpose in terms of sorting out that trash, they just threw it in the dump. So if you go in that dump and you get that shit back out, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, we can sort this to here, we can sort that to there. And then that's because, again, the technology for that didn't occur until after those dumps were already being dumped upon and formed or even capped off at that point.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's going back in using that new technology in order to do that.
Yeah.
But let's get into a real topic, because this is that's one thing. Yeah. We can go around and merry-go-round all we want, but what the fuck has been going on the last 2 weeks? First Minneapolis, then it sprawled to other areas, then like the protests, and then the crazy ass riots, and calling for defunding of police and all this. What are your thoughts on all that?
We're going to pause. You can collect your thoughts. I'll collect my thoughts.
I already
and
know
we'll
my
take a leak,
thoughts.
and then we'll get
Oh
right
my
into
goodness.
it. Yep.
Literally at the most important opportune
this one,
moment,
yeah,
I got to go to the bathroom.
I want to make sure that I'm fresh and I don't have to.
And he's talking and nobody can hear what he's saying. So, going on. Yes, if you'd like to do some homesteading or learn about homesteading, The Self-Sufficient Backyard is a great introduction, and it's a book that I started reading. So it's a couple that has lived self-sustaining for about 40 years now. And they lived in 3 different homesteads. One was in Maine, in northern Maine. One was in the middle of literally nowhere in Canada. And then now they're in Nova Scotia, still in Canada. And essentially they go on about how the things that they've learned, the trials, the tribulations, the tests, the pitfalls, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And it gives you a really good overview of how you can do things if you want to set it up in either an urban or suburban area, or even if you had acres on acres of land. So I would highly suggest checking that book out if you have some sort of inkling into wanting to be a little more self-sufficient for yourself, and just kind of wanted to get back into the lifestyle or try something like that. So yeah, I do highly recommend that book. Aaron is now back. Hello, Aaron. It's good to see you again, my friend.
Oh man, I've been home for. See, I took this whole thing probably more serious than a lot of people did.
Yes,
and
yes,
I
you
stayed
did.
home. I stayed home, so being able to physically
You stayed
see
home,
other
you wore a
human beings-
mask, you
Yep,
did all
sure
that
did.
crap.
Yep, I wore a mask at home, Chris. That's how safe I was.
Yeah, but what about the whole thing that when Cuomo said that more people were getting were testing positive and going into the hospital who were staying home and doing that instead of going out? Because that did happen.
Yeah, it definitely did.
I forget when the hell that press conference was, but that was a few weeks ago now. And it's like, well, hello, if you're sitting at home, not doing anything, you're not testing your immunity, and then you're probably eating like shit too. You're not getting out, you're not walking, you're not doing things, and you're probably a lot more susceptible to getting something. So
you had mentioned the crazy riots that are going on.
Yeah, the police brutality and the crazy shit. So first, let's get into the whole let's get into the movement. Then let's get into kind of the things about the police. And I want to offer some possible solutions that I don't hear a lot of people talking about. So let's get your thoughts on this whole thing first.
Again, I feel like it's Ric Flair, like, woo, like one thing after the other.
Yeah, but I don't care about that. I want to know specific. What's your thoughts on this whole thing?
I had a problem. So what the problem was...
Not a hemorrhoid.
No, it definitely wasn't. What the problem was, kind of like a hemorrhoid, I was obsessed with watching and reading the news. So
first mistake.
Yeah, I really went down the rabbit hole. The only time I can remember being like this enshrined in something or enthralled with it was after the Boston Marathon bombing. When the bombing happened, right after that, it was like something out of a movie. Like they were chasing the alleged suspects who did it through towns. They had military lockdown and they were straight up martial law, like searching people's homes. And then people had video of like that guy throwing bombs out the window, and it was straight up out of a movie. And I'm like, oh, I was hooked. Like I could not stop watching it. Well, now that this happened, these riots and things, there were just so many people there was crazy videos of rioters, crazy videos of the police, crazy videos of people talking about their opinions. I was hooked. So after much contemplation,
you finally kicked the bucket and said, I don't want to turn on the news.
I had to, because it was negatively affecting me.
Oh,
and
fuck yeah.
I also realized that I sit at my house. I'm still doing quarantine, and most of these things... I mean...
You're working from home.
Yeah.
Working from home does not institute quarantine because, first of all, you're here.
Yeah.
Second of all, we played cards together.
Yeah, right.
You went out, you're doing things, so you're not really in quarantine.
I don't mind my friend's diseases. I'm willing to make that sacrifice.
All right, but go back with
I realized that I don't know what to do. I have ideas, but I don't know what to do. I have no idea. I know things that I would like to see change.
That's
about anything.
So general. Yeah. I don't know where you're going.
So when we talk about I don't even know what defunding the police means.
It means taking away their budget.
Okay, so like they don't have because
I mean some places are calling for the disbandment of the police force, which means they would eliminate the police force altogether. Right. That's fucking retarded.
Well, once they do that, don't they rebuild the police and hire all new police with new leadership? Because that's what I understood that they were trying to do.
Disbanding the police force would mean you say goodbye to the police and they would do something different.
See, I thought
then defunding the police force means that they're taking away a portion of the budget. Now, if it's $150 million, like they talk about in... LA or in LA County or wherever in LA that is, when they're talking about like $150 million defunding of the police force, that could be a major chunk, but that could also be a small little portion because I don't know what their actual yearly budget is when it comes to, it could be $1 billion police force.
Yeah.
And, you know, that $150 million could be going to getting new cars or new precincts or whatever it could be. So is that really going to have any effect on the police force itself.
Right.
Probably a little bit. But overall, is it really going to do anything?
that's what I don't know enough
is
about.
Is it actually just like a smoke screen
Right.
to say, oh, we're doing something about it, but we're really not doing something about it?
Yeah.
Because we all know that happens way too often.
Yeah. Did you ever see the battle ram? Do you remember the battle ram?
The what?
The battle ram was a thing in Los Angeles that they were using. It was like a tank type
the military vehicles?
but they had a long battering ram with a square metal plate on the end of it, and they would literally just crash it into people's houses, and like they're like suspected drug dealers and stuff. But that was in the 90s, that was one of the things that
was
people
part
were
of the
complaining
police
about.
riot, right?
Now
that was part of the riots in
it
the 90s,
eventually
right?
became, but they were just crashing into people's houses with this thing. Now, is that what they mean defunding? Like we're not,
No,
that's
well,
what I mean.
mean-
Like we're not paying for tanks anymore, or we're not paying, salaries. I don't know enough about it.
Well, no. I mean, first of all, we can't answer that in this
You'd have to do
in
some
any way,
research.
shape, or form because each place would be different.
Yeah.
So one county or one city or one suburb or one area will handle it much differently than another area. So again, like I said, and that's why I brought up the LA thing, because it's like their budget for the police force being in LA County has to probably, I would suspect, around $1 billion a year. I mean, around that time, about
Who
that
knows?
much.
Probably a lot more.
So
Who
if they say we're cutting, like, that sounds amazing, that sounds great.
Yeah.
But in the grand scheme of things, does that mean, well, we're not approving the new precinct that's going to be built? We're not approving the new police warehouse where all the drugs and guns and shit that you collected from crimes are going to be kept. And then we're not going to be able to hire the new class of people that we wanted to hire.
Right.
And then we're going to cut down on, this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
That's probably what it really is. So
I
they're
don't
probably
know.
going to tighten up the budget strings
like,
just a
we're
little
not-
bit for now until this thing blows over.
Yeah.
And
Didn't they end up giving them more money than that? They talked about defunding, and then they ended up approving more money in the budget. I think that's what
I don't
happened.
know.
I think that's what happened.
Yeah, but I mean, what I'm saying is each area is different. So I don't know the specifics of each because, well, I'm not in LA. LA doesn't affect me. The only reason why is because I know they said $150 million. And that sounds, again, like a lot of money. And without you knowing the total cost of the yearly budget for the police force in LA County, you don't know if that's really a lot of money or if it's just a fucking drop in the bucket. And that's why I'm only using that one as an example. But other places are saying, yes, defunding the police force or whatever it is. And I can understand, you don't want them to necessarily have these battering rams or these military trucks or the militarization of the police force.
Right.
I get that. Yeah, it makes sense. But the disbandment of a police force and going into a different direction or a different way.
See, that's not
is
the way I understood
so-
it. What I understood that the police force that was disbanded, where I forget which city it was, but they had a problematic police force.
Well, in that, if
where
you
they
have a pro-
disbanded the whole thing, and they got rid of all the police, and then they rehired all of the new police. And that's the way that I understand what they're talking about. Disbanding isn't like, oh, we're just not policing anymore, and it's going to be a lawless
That's
area.
the thing. Some areas are calling.
Well, what is their
for-
solution then? Because you have to have
I don't know.
some
I didn't
kind of-
read it. I didn't read the articles that popped up when I was looking at it, just because I didn't have I wasn't in the time frame
course.
to be able to do that at that point. But some areas are actually calling for the total dismemberment of a police
see,
force.
I thought it
where
was
they
to
will not.
rebuild.
Some may be doing that.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, there's so many
So,
different
okay,
things.
well, let's say-
because we got to get clear with this. There's so many different things happening around the country in so many different ways.
Yeah.
One way is going to be one way, and
Yeah.
it's not going to be a blanket for all. That's why I'm saying it's like there's no way to be able to take all of this information and say, well, this place is doing this place is doing that. There, LA is doing this, San Francisco's doing that, Minneapolis is doing this, Seattle's doing Chaz, whatever it is. There's so many freaking different areas and things that are
What's
happening.
Chaz?
don't know, some stupid thing that it's that six ban or bleh. It's that six neighborhood area that they took over.
Oh, the autonomous zone?
Yeah.
They call it Chaz?
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Notice what's funny is there was a meme that said Trump is going to take a 6-block radius next to Chaz with manlier men and call it Chad.
Oh my God.
And I saw that
Chad.
earlier and I'm like, oh my God.
That's funny.
But no, it actually like stands for something, but I don't remember what it actually is. Like it's
I'm sure autonomous
Central
zone.
Hall.
Yeah, autonomous zone.
I think it's Central Hall Autonomous Zone
That
is
sounds
what
right.
it's called.
So what I read about that is that it's where didn't they burn the precinct down there or something or something?
I don't know if they burned the precinct there or if that. I think in Minneapolis was where.
Well, there's
it
an
burned.
area that somehow the protesters like,
There was
took
in
over or something.
in
That's
Chaz in Seattle. There was apparently a dumpster fire that they called the Seattle Fire Department to come and take care of. And there was like this whole thing behind it. But again, I'm not keeping up on that
Me
stuff
neither.
too much, only because we've talked about it.
Yeah.
There's so much that you can only pay attention to in the world. And I'd rather be in the moment enjoying life. And so like some of that now let's be real. I know what's going on. I get what's going on. I understand it to a point.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm never going to truly understand what they're going through, what the Black community is going through, what impoverished communities are going through. I will never be able to understand that because I've never been able to walk in those shoes.
Sure.
So I get that part where it's like, you don't know what you're talking about. No shit, I don't know what I'm talking about.
right.
Can you explain it a little bit for me so I can kind of understand it? And I mean, one out of the things that I've heard people talking about and discussing, okay, I get it. I understand what you're going through and what you're saying.
Right.
And like, I get that. Yes, you can say it's that police target blacks. You can say that. And, it's been a ongoing joke in the comedian world.
Yeah,
like when you see like getting pulled over, like DWB, saying driving while black.
Yeah.
And, you see that all over the place. Like Chappelle was
he's
making
great.
jokes and, all these people are making jokes and, sometimes you can say comedy helps solve problems by facing it with laughter. And then there's the people who are outright like, oh my God, I'm so offended, blah, blah, blah. And like, you can't joke about those things. And it's like, it's this weird situation. It's like, it's this weird, murky, foggy thing that you have to kind of gracefully go through.
Yeah.
And so I understand, yes, there needs to be police reform. I get that. I'm 100% on board with that. And you said the other day when we were talking, I'm going to have you say that quote in a second. And you were talking about when you get pulled over.
Yeah.
What do you feel? So say exactly what you're saying.
Well, not me, but
no, I know. But
yeah,
what were we
my
talking
two
about?
friends in the same day when we were talking about, they each had different opinions about this culture, this phenomenon that's going on right now. And both of them made a great point. When they get pulled over, they feel afraid, even though any reasonable person would think, I'm not doing anything wrong, but just the initial fear. And I had been pulled over, and I remember feeling that fear, even though you know that you're not doing anything wrong.
Well, you did something wrong.
It depends on what it is. Yeah, it depends on what it is.
But a violation.
Yeah. So, but I physically learned to remember that you're right. It's a violation, if anything, right? So, and you don't know why they pulled you over, right? Or
unless you know,
even another example is if when the lights come on behind you, which happened to me on the way here, some people feel fear. And even if that police officer goes by you,
hold on. Do you feel
don't.
fear, or do you feel more? Adrenaline.
I don't feel anything now, and I'll tell you why. Remember, you had texted me that you can't live your life in fear. That's one of the things where when I was in my late 20s, like just a lot of things occurred to me that, wait a minute, well, we are American citizens. We have rights. There's a process. And I don't do anything wrong. But if someone views something that I did as wrong, we do have a process to take care of that. And I really don't have anything to be afraid of. And once I started thinking that way, even when I see lights on or I do get pulled over, which has happened, I don't have that fear. And a great point that another one of my friends who said, I feel afraid. One of his relatives is in law enforcement, and they were kind of having a back and forth about this, so what's going on. He said, look, if you get pulled over, do yourself a favor, and if you're going to get arrested, put your hands behind your back and cooperate. And that's what you're supposed to do. You get your day in court, right? Well, that's not what's happening, and that's a whole nother discussion. But if you physically realize, like, even if the worst case scenario is like, oh my goodness, I'm going to get arrested, you put your hands behind your back, you go to whatever they do with you, and there's a process for that. But people have that fear of unknown consequences. I get it. I got over it. But they made a very good point that when you're getting pulled over, why do you have that fear? Why do we have to be afraid?
Well, like I said, I think it's more the negative consequences and getting
exactly
the ticket and then having to pay for it.
And you don't know what's going to happen.
Wasting your time in court and all that.
Sure.
I think that's the biggest thing. There also might be adrenaline where you're getting the adrenaline kick, but I think it's more so like if you get pulled, like, I mean, I've gotten pulled over. I've had good experiences getting pulled over where it was fine, and I've had a bad experience getting pulled over where it's like, first of all, because I knew right off the bat why we were getting pulled over, and we weren't doing anything wrong, but in their eyes they thought we were drunk. And so at that point I was getting a little bit of an attitude, only in the terms of like, you really need to step back because I don't need the entire police force here at 2 in the because you're bored. And you think that I'm drunk because I was swerving to miss all the potholes going down your fucking shitty ass street. So like it really, like that, it triggered me in the terms of I was mad because it's like, now you're trying to look for something and everything you're doing is an absolute failure. And you go back to eat your fucking donuts, dude, because that's exactly what he was doing when he was pulling us over. You had a little bit of sugar in your fucking mouth. And I mean, let's be real. Most cops are good. There are dickheads. And that guy who did that to who had his foot, his knee on him for that long was ridiculous. And he's a dick, and he deserves whatever they throw at him. To have that type of behavior is beyond what anybody should do. Well, and if you're if it's a power move and you're acting all cool and shit, and you're like, oh yeah, you're I got, and you do that, that's fucked up.
Well, that's what I was having a good discussion with my friends. Like, okay, what do we have a legal system for? Why do people go to, maybe they're a DA and then they become a judge, and their job is to look at both sides of the evidence and decide whether that person or persons is guilty?
No, that's not true. It depends on if you waive your right to a trial by jury. The jury are the ones who find.
So in our legal system, you have a right to face your accuser, and someone has to accuse you of doing the crime, and you have the right to face your accuser and present evidence of why you didn't do the crime, right? But we have a whole established legal system for that, okay? So the whole, where we somehow, some law enforcement have become judge, jury, and executioner is completely usurping that person's right to face their accuser and present evidence of their innocence.
And we're also corruption, and that's the power behind it, because you are a person who is supposed to uphold the law. You are the person that can truly break the law and kind of get away with it because sometimes there's that whole mentality is we take care of our own.
Right.
And so you have some of those issues there when it comes down to it. But go ahead, what you were saying.
Well, so first we have a problem where if you're in that authority position and there are no checks and balances where someone is saying to you, look, you're not judge, jury, and executioner. Your job is to present these people to their accuser so that a jury of their peers can convict them. And then we have a punishment system for that. And if you cannot safely transport that alleged criminal or suspect to be presented to the accuser so that they can have their presumed innocence until proven guilty and they can have their day in court, then you're doing your job all wrong. Now, I can only imagine what a law enforcement officer, especially someone who may not work in the best neighborhood or works in the inner city.
Yeah, right there, 100%. But even in an area that's not bad, like that it maybe a suburb that is truly most people are okay and get along.
Right.
But I mean, everywhere it's going to have their stresses because one of the, like, I'll try to take it to like driving Uber and Lyft. You know, you have a driver mentality, and if you have a few bad rides, those bad rides stick out like a sore thumb compared to all of the other rides. Right. So you can say like something like, oh my God, passengers are assholes. And, you know, this, that, and the other thing, you know, they're always drunk. They're always belligerent. They're always belittling you. There's no respect between drivers and passengers. You know, we're trying to get you home safe and all that. And you're the asshole. And the thing is, it's like those are only a couple of rides out of the vast majority that you truly take. And because of that, you get this mentality that it's you versus them.
Yes.
And so you can assume, or you want to assume, that this next person is going to be a problem, or that this is going to be an issue. And sometimes you could actually probably coerce a problem because of it's the you versus me mentality. And people pick up on that where they're like, dude, why are you starting with me? And then they're going to get real defensive, and it's going to be this escalated situation. And I can completely understand in terms of how you look at things like that, because as a cop, if you pull somebody over, do you know why I pulled you over? No, I don't know. What happened? What's going on? You know,
so the wrong answer is because you're an asshole. Is that not supposed to say that?
So you're getting treated like shit when people get pulled over. You're probably getting lied to because they probably know why they're getting pulled over.
Sure.
And I mean, like, I mean, maybe one time I got pulled over. I didn't know why I was being pulled over.
Yeah, that happened to me once. Yep.
And I thought it was just because I was going up to Lake Ontario because the Northern Lights were supposed to show. So I went up to Olcott. It was like 2 a.m. or something. And so I'm up there taking some pictures because it was really nice. It was a really nice night. And there was no Northern Lights though, but I at least wanted to try it. So I start driving back, and then all of a sudden this cop starts following me. And I mean, this was a good stretch of time too, like 10 minutes worth. I'm like, you are just waiting to pull me over for something. And so like, other than that, there was no reason. And he flicks his lights on. And so like, at that point, it's like, no, I don't know what you're doing. Like, why? And he's like, oh, what are you doing out this late? I'm like, the US, I can do what I want.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't say that. That's what I was thinking. But I'm like, I had my GoPro and like some camera stuff, and I'm like, I was up at the lake taking some night shots because we were supposed to it was possible to see the Northern Lights. And so he risk assessed that and said, okay, like, you're not like, there's nothing there. They're like, you're not drunk, you're not doing like drugs or anything like that or whatever. And he's like, do you know why I pulled you over? I'm like, no. And he's like, because your license plate's peeling and I almost can't read it.
Oh, you got one of those defunct New York plates?
Every plate.
Remember those?
Every plate's that now.
Yeah, there's a reason.
And he's like, I'm not going to write you a ticket. Just make sure you go get it taken care of. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. I'll do that tomorrow. And I'm like, I knew, like, I didn't think about it because you know how many times you pass cops,
Sure,
or they're following you, and I knew the plate was defective, and I'm like, I'm not going to get a new one,
right?
And so that's fine. But it's like he literally went to 10 minutes and was like trying to find something to pull me over,
right?
And like, yeah, you may have noticed that right away, but he may have thought about that right at the last second when you turn the lights on. And it's like, at that point, it's like, what the fuck? Like, yeah, it's 3:00 in the fucking morning and I'm driving. So what?
Yep.
And it's like, there's no bar around here that's even open.
Sure.
So get the fuck out of my deal.
Yeah.
But like, to me, it's more the inconvenience. Cause it's like, yeah, it's 3:00 in the morning. I'm an hour away from getting home,
right?
And I just want to get home, and now you're taking 20 minutes out of my fucking time,
yeah.
And it's extended, and it's like, oh my God, you're killing me.
So I think what the issue is the approach and the tact. So in the two different scenarios, what if that person came up to you were in your vehicle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, from one thing that I learned that is a great tip for anyone who's getting pulled over at nighttime: turn your dome light on so that they can see you, and keep your hands where they can see them. And if you turn your dome light on and then keep your hands up, you might have to slowly get your insurance, or you're making slow movements. It puts them at ease. First of all, I would have never thought to turn my dome light on.
Yeah. When I say, I mean, that's the whole thing. Like when I say or if I have to grab something, what I normally do is I usually grab the shit because I have it right there. Uh-huh. So I just grab it real quick and I have it on hand. So it's like when they ask.
So if let's say you did that, you turn your dome light on, you have your hands close to the steering wheel so that you don't have a weapon or something, but the guy came up to you and you maybe you just go to put your hand down to get your license, and he started yelling at you, keep your hands up, and was mean to you, right? Rather than just treating you like a human being and start escalating the situation. I think that's part of it's the tact.
Okay,
which is one of the issues.
I can understand that in theory.
Yeah.
In theory,
it does happen.
It sounds good.
Right.
But in practicality, you got to remember the human psyche behind that is in the middle of the night, if you got that light shining on them and you see somebody and you walk up to them, you as an officer, you have no idea who that is in the car. You don't know if they're Grandma Edna going to little Billy's soccer practice, knitting crochet.
Right.
You don't know if it's a photographer going to take care of the night sky. You don't know if it's a drug dealer.
Well, that's what doesn't make any sense. So let's say that it is a drug dealer who's the most hardcore person ever, but he's staying calm, thinking, well, maybe if I just be cool, I'll get out of this. Mm-hmm. But then I think it's the approach to where if person is calm, if the officer is calm and asks questions and tell there's a problem. I've been approached two different ways. I've been approached where they were already fired up, and that just exacerbates the situation. And
for sure.
I've been treated like a person.
In this instance, they're the authority figure, and they're the ones who are going to control whether it's going to remain a calm encounter or if the situation is going to escalate. Yeah. And so, I mean, but that's the whole thing. Like, if you are an officer coming up to a car and you don't know, and you see a slight movement, you are on guard. When you are walking up to that, you are trying to see if they are making any little movements.
Sure. Because
you don't know if that's the last time you could go up there.
I could be so terrified doing that. I don't know if I could even do it. Yeah, I'd be afraid of getting shot. I get it.
The whole thing is, you as an officer who is doing something like that is probably going to suffer from like a wartime situation, because essentially you are at war in a peaceful society. But the thing is, again, there's people who do commit crimes, and you don't necessarily know who could be the person who could stop you right there. And, you know, so I can understand in terms of that, but I can also, you know, the tact has to be one. Yes, it has to be much better, because it's like, you could be like, hey, can you please keep your arms where I can see them?
Yeah.
Like, or put your fucking hands back up on the wheel.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, that is a vast difference.
Yeah.
And again, though, we don't know what it's like to be cops.
No.
We don't know what
imagine.
that is, because we've never walked in their shoes.
Yep.
We don't know what it would be like to walk up to somebody and have the possibility that there is a chance that person could do something.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The overall chance of anything happening is very, very small.
Yeah.
But there's there's
it
that
happens
chance
all the time. Yeah.
And because there's that tiny chance, that tiny chance becomes the focal point.
Sure.
And all you see is that tiny chance. So if you see that little tweak, that little movement, oh my God, they're getting a gun. Right. My hand's on my hip.
Yeah. So do you think, let's say someone is completely naive and they don't know anything. They're just going about life, and they don't even know why you would keep your hands up. And all of a sudden a person comes up to them who's telling them to do something that they don't want to do. And even maybe you, out of habit, just don't even realize that you're putting your hands down. You don't understand that the reason that they're telling you to keep your hands up is because you may have a weapon or something. Mm-hmm. Do you think if they explain to you, look, we're asking you to keep your hands up because I don't know if you have a weapon, and could you just please, if they calmly and rationally explain to you things better, or I don't know what the solution is to stop all this craziness.
Well, first of all, I think the biggest thing that you have to do is, you gotta not make it where they're so worried at the smallest thing. But so I have taken classes that were taught by police instructors. And they had, not for law enforcement or anything like that, but just to understand some of the nuances when it comes to, you know, protection and protecting yourself and things like that. And so like some of the things that they've said and talked about when you're in the class makes you go, huh, I wouldn't have even thought of that, because that's not my mindset. Like, they're talking about a distance, like used to be, I think, like the 15-foot rule. Then it became like the 60-foot rule, because in less than 2 seconds or around that, you can literally almost cover that ground and get to that person. So it's like, you used to have a smaller radius. Now, if you're out, you have to have a much larger radius, which means now you're paying attention even more. So you're heightened. And, you know, I think that's part of the issue is you're always alert, and you're always on high alert, and you're always trying to make like, oh my God, a tree branch cracked. What was that?
Sure.
Like, what's going on? So it puts you in this heightened state of awareness. And that can cause certain damages to how you interact with people. And so, like I said, that's why in practicality is one thing versus a theoretical sense. Like, yeah, you could say, yeah, you should probably approach the car calmly. But again, if they're in a heightened sense of awareness and they see a little tweak, and again, they're in that mindset, oh my God, that person has something. I'm
not saying it's easy at all. I just think that you can be in control of your reactions. For example, after a weird thing happened to me after September 11th.
I think the biggest thing has to be training.
That's what I mean.
Better training.
Yeah.
But go.
Well, so after September 11th of 2001, I was 21, and I already had a paranoid brain, and I didn't know what was going on. I thought we were under attack, and there were so many things. I
think everybody thought that for a little bit.
But I went to Washington D.C. The next summer, and they had things on the radio like, just scare things that were just scary, talking about this and that.
Yeah, but that's also the media and the news
For
and shit
sure.
like that.
Yeah,
They
and
do
I was
that,
naive.
and
Yeah.
that's what they're doing now. That's what they did with
sure.
the pandemic.
Yeah.
Everything was blown out of a proportion to an extreme amount.
Yeah, well, it depends on what news you're listening to, but I get it. So after that, I remember about 6 or 7 years later at my work, the emergency alert system came on, but it didn't turn off. It was like, beep, they play that noise. And it was on so long that people who were doing their jobs stopped doing their jobs and like started looking around like, okay, that's weird. This is all these people just noticed that this emergency alert thing was on, right? Well, for me, because I was scared out of my mind for this, I lived in this hyper vigilant state for a really long time that I didn't even realize that I was living in. I got terrified and I thought to myself, well, if something is going on and we're under attack again, I'm not dying in this stupid office building. So I got up and I went in my car and I'm like, okay, what's my plan here? If there's some kind of real emergency going on, what do I do? But all of these other people, they're just going about their jobs because they weren't in that hyper vigilant state that I was living my life in, right? And I think that if you're a police officer that's used to dealing with the worst criminals and then just normal criminals all the time, over and over again, and exactly what you said. Every time you get out of that car, if you're pulling someone over, you don't know who is behind the wheel. I think that you have to overcome and practice overcoming that fear so that you're not all amped up when you're going to talk to that person.
Yeah, but
right?
Again, but here the biggest problem is in these impoverished neighborhoods where there is higher crime statistically, and you are a cop in that area. As I said, you have every cop, when they pull somebody over, has a chance that something could happen that's potentially a fatal thing to them.
Yep.
If you're in a impoverished neighborhood that has a higher crime rate statistically in that particular area and you're a cop, you're going to be on even more alert because your chance of something happening is going to go up.
Right.
Now, I mean, the biggest thing I think that let's go into ways to solve some of these issues. First of all, a lot of people, from what I'm hearing, aren't coming up with the solutions or ideas. They're just saying defund the police, dissolve the police, blah, blah, blah. That's it. And the thing is, we can't do that. Let's be real. You cannot dissolve the police force. Yeah. And they are the peacekeepers. They are the ones who are there to protect law and order. And yeah, there are going to be a few bad apples. And I think some of the things that need to be done, like real things that should be done, is there should be more training.
Yeah.
There should be more training for people going into the police force. So the police academies, they should be training people. They should be doing psych evaluations on people throughout the entire journey of that. They should be doing ongoing training that is in depth. They should do behavioral training as well when it comes down to it throughout their entire careers. There should always be training going on from the beginning to the end. And even when they end, going back into society where you're not a cop anymore, so you don't have to be on high alert and how you process those changes. But what I think they also need to start doing is, as I said, they should have mental checks.
Yeah.
In the beginning aspect when they're being hired and through the academy.
Right.
But they should be in a therapy setting.
Yeah.
From day one that they're in the police academy all the way through, even maybe after they leave the police force, because throughout their journey, they're going to be lied on. They're going to be, facing some of the worst people in the world because they're the ones who are going and taking calls that, there could be this here, there could be that there. There's, they have to face all of those things. So one of the things that they need to do, I think, is every single cop who's out in the field, who does traffic, who does pulling over, who does investigative work. I'm not talking about necessarily the cops that are sitting in a courtroom.
Right.
Because they're not, they're sitting in a courtroom. They're just making sure people stay safe in that courtroom. But if they're out in the field, or if they're out, doing the investigative work, they should be talking to a therapist at least once a week. And that person may need more throughout the week if they've just gone through a severe traumatic experience, whether that be a bad accident that they got called to that really gave them some PTSD, that they did have a life-threatening experience, that maybe somebody pulled a gun on them.
Sure.
And how to be able to navigate those waters after that experience, so then you don't take that experience with you from then on. You're able to get past those experiences and kind of reset back to zero or close to it. So I think a mental health check really is a big thing that needs to be done.
Sure.
Because again, they're always on alert.
Yeah.
Yes, they face a chance that every day they go in could be their last day.
Well, right. And even if they learn to overcome that hypervigilance, which is what I had to do, eventually I got to the point where I'm like, I'm literally living my life in fear and afraid of all these things that you have to come over. You have to get over.
They're always going to live in a hypervigilant in that way, but it's the coping mechanisms on how to.
That's what I had to do.
Perceive things differently, so it doesn't affect their decision making, because a lot of these things can be split second decision making things. And so again, like I said, they should at least have once a week therapy sessions. If that therapist deems they need multiple throughout, then they need multiple. And then if they're unfit to be able to be in the field for a certain time frame, then they are not placed in that particular.
Well, and I also think that there probably should be a lot more focus on like de-escalating situations that are ridiculous. Like put people in ridiculous scenarios that do happen. Use real life things as examples.
Sure they do.
And practice. I don't know that they do. Like
some areas will do things like that.
You think
some
they do?
Areas will do also extreme measure training as well. So if they're in the event of an extreme measure where, yes, split second decisions mean life and death for you and maybe the surrounding people or the community, then they do those types of trainings as well.
Are they teaching them how to protect themselves, or are they teaching them how to de-escalate? Like I think
honestly, personally,
that's
I don't
what I
know,
wonder.
because
Me neither.
We're not cops.
No. So
we
I
don't
wondered,
know.
you know what I always wanted to do is just take the training. I always wanted to know what you have to do. Like literally take the courses, or someone do like a documentary on how, what, like as much as I know as the Police Academy movies.
I think the initial trainings, they have to do much differently. So like certain people who fall through the cracks that shouldn't be cops. There should be these safeguards in place that say, you're not fit for this type of job.
Yeah.
We have a different type of job that you can do.
So
it's not, or I mean, I wouldn't even do it in that way. I would say like, all right, so we have evaluated your particular skill sets. We have deemed that you are eligible for this job A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to be a street cop. That's not what you're going to.
Yeah.
If you want to do one of these three jobs, this is what you can choose from.
Yeah.
We want to place you in job A, and then it's going to be a personal decision at that point. But at least it weeds out the people who probably shouldn't be cops on the street doing those things, or even having a personal vendetta like that cop may have actually had against this particular man.
We had one of those, Officer Vandetsky. Everybody called him Officer Vandetsky. So here's a question. When you think of like an astronaut, right? There's a pride in being an astronaut, or maybe even in the armed forces, right? There's a pride that you're at least supposed to have being in the armed forces. Like, I protect our country, I protect our freedoms, and it's something to be proud of. And you're held to a higher standard than our average casual citizen, right? Do you think that a change in the culture where you return that pride and it's something to be proud of?
Police were highly regarded back in the day. They were highly regarded, and it was a highly sought after job, and it was a respectable job, and people.
But do you think that
but
the,
I
the
think-
emphasis on the reason why you're becoming an officer is to that you're held to a higher standard?
No, I think
than people?
that there needs. This is where the reform needs to come in. Is the fact that you have that mentality, that gang mentality that says we're in this together. We're going to take care of our own. And I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
And then it's also the people getting in that aren't supposed to be cops.
Yep.
And they're the ones who are getting in. Then it's very easy when you're doing that job, it's probably very easy to say, you know what? This guy over here, he's making a ton of money on, I'll take a little cut of that. Because then I'll keep him out on the street. I'll let him know when people are coming or looking his way.
Oh, yeah.
And because the whole thing is it's the job, you don't get paid.
Yeah, well,
It's a low paying job.
Well, it's not low, but it's not what they, if you're putting your life on the line, the military and the police and pretty much anyone in that, they're definitely all of them are paid
all
enough.
underpaid. Yeah. And I think that plays into an effect. But like I said, I think the biggest thing is if they are going into the academy should be much more rigorous. It should also weed out the people who shouldn't be in the field,
Right.
in the community.
Well, that's what I mean.
And then, hold on. And then the biggest thing is they should have mental health throughout every single, at least once a week. If it's deemed more, it's deemed more, but never less than that. And every single officer who goes out in the field has to have that requirement. If you miss it, you're suspended.
Right.
And then the final, there's probably more things that need to be done, but these are the things that I thought about that I think even in practice would be good. So the mental health, that would be probably the most tremendous thing in changing.
Yeah.
But the last thing is that these officers should be out in the community much more. So they should be first of all, they need to live in the community that they're serving. So if you are a officer that is within the community, wherever your precinct lies, you have to live with it. You should be living within that community. So then you have that community pride. You want to make sure you are there safer. That just fell. And then, then you're making relationships with the people in that community. You see who's in the community, you know who's in the community. You kind of get a feel for a lot of different things. Then you're seen out there. People know who you are as an officer. And I don't think people should just be in their squad cars sitting in the corner watching people. I think they should go out, if kids are playing basketball or whatever, go hang out, talk to them, see how they're doing, go to the community center, show who you are, and be part of the community, even more so in impoverished communities and high crime communities, because you're creating that connection with that community, and so people are going to probably have a better regard for you or the police in general. Yeah. It's probably going to raise a little bit more respect. Yeah. And so I think that could be the cultural shift back into, the respectful side of things.
Well, that's what I think.
But they also in turn have to respect the people that they're policing and the area that they're policing within. So it's a respect on both sides.
So I really think that if you're a person who is seeing the worst of humanity every single day, and it can be really easy to turn into it's us, the force versus the community, and every person that you approach is a criminal. You have that mentality that every single person is a criminal that's going to lie to me. And then you can start having a really dim view of the people that you're supposed to be protecting and policing. And if you can't consciously remind yourself that you're there to do good and to protect the innocent and the people who can't protect themselves, and really be conscious and aware. And I think most police officers do that every single day, and their job is very difficult. But I think that there should be more of a shift in that mentality to get back to, I have pride in my job. I'm going to do my job very well. I'm going to realize that I'm protecting the good people that are innocent, and that not everyone I approach is a criminal. Maybe this person needs help. Maybe they are committing a crime, but there's reason why they're committing that crime. I'm going to have, I'm going to try to do my best not to escalate the situation, and to just do a better job of treating people with calmness and at least stability. I think that's what the biggest problem is it's real easy to fall into taking it personally. And especially if you're dealing with that element over and over and over again, if you can't personally take a step back and realize I'm caught up and everyone has become a criminal to me and I'm disrespecting everyone that I approach, that's where the problems are coming in.
Well, and that's also, I think, part of the mental health issue.
Exactly. So there's like a huge, I think a huge support network that can be enacted where I think that you can practice scenarios. And I'm not talking about just when you first get your initial training, maybe a couple times a year, where you do these mock scenarios where maybe someone yells at you. I know in the Marines, they'll have people just straight up yell at you and you have to take it. So maybe you can do more scenarios where someone is super fired up and you maybe practice de-escalation techniques. I listened to this great audio book that I heard from someone who was on the Joe Rogan podcast.
I think all precincts should also have a float tank.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean is like there needs to be a shift where I've heard a few stories listening to NPR on the way to Glen Falls today. I've read a few stories where if you are the person who may have said, hey, you're being real violent with that guy, get off of his neck or something like that, and where they have, quote, blown the whistle or alerted the higher ups in their precinct or their force that this particular person was out of line or did something that was very wrong. First of all, to make that decision, if you're a reasonable person, where you feel like you're obligated to say something, I think is a real big choice. First of all, I don't know, but I would think that like you really have to contemplate, I don't want to get this person in trouble, but what I saw was egregious and against what we stand for. Well, then that person, what you would think any reasonable force would do would say, hey, we had reports of you, using either excessive force or violence, etc. Is this true? What do you have to say about it? Maybe do some retraining or something. But what these forces were doing were they were firing and reprimanding the whistleblower, ostracizing the whistleblower and making sure that they demote that person. And that's the culture I think that has to change.
I don't know necessarily though how much that happens comparative to
right, and that's why we have most police forces are good and are doing their job and are protecting people. We have problems in spot areas, and that's where it needs to be corrected. But there are those areas where you can't speak up and say, this person did this and they were out of line and I don't know what else to do. All of a sudden you're the ostracized one, when in reality you would think that they would start correcting the issues, but they're not.
I think every cop should also see this one thing every morning or every time they start their shift, and says, what's the difference between a cop and a criminal?
What's the answer? What is it?
Well, first let me ask you, what do you think?
I don't know what the answer is. I've heard this before, but I can't remember.
All right. Again, I'll just say it. What's the difference between a cop and a criminal?
I don't know.
One bad decision.
Okay. That makes sense.
And so, I mean, for that, I think they should remember that
right.
it's very easy to probably get sucked into a lifestyle where you're maybe seeing some things going on around you. You're trying to cut a little bit of action because maybe you're not getting paid enough. Maybe you got bills at home that are stacking up and this and that. I mean, life happens. A lot of people. But again, the biggest thing I think that will truly make a major difference to a police officer's life in terms of them being able to reset back to zero is mental health
for sure.
and therapy for every single officer that is out in the field. And then if they realize that this person becomes a particular problem, then the therapist has the obligation to make that correct.
Right.
In terms of either suspending them, pulling them, changing their, and I don't want to say demoting because
well, I think right now in a lot of these problem areas, the culture is not only that problem person, it's that if you even say anything about that this person may be having a problem, you're the one who gets demoted, ostracized. I mean, there's examples all over the place.
But that's the thing.
And that's the culture that also has to change.
The problem is that is not what should be happening.
Yeah.
And then the other big thing to have that cultural and social shift is that people need to see the police in the community. They need to be living in that community.
Yeah.
And I think that they should be a source of help and a source of outreach when it comes down to it. Yeah. I've seen a lot of good stories where cops will go in and help, maybe a kid that is having a rough time with his homework.
Yeah, there's definitely heroes for sure.
Some cops will go and buy some gifts for people in the community that they serve that can't necessarily afford it. There's a lot of great things that cops do. And sometimes it's on their own. Most of the time that stuff's on their own dime. Yep. But I think that there should be a huge presence when it comes down to it. And then I think that the complaints should not be handled by the precinct itself. So
I investigated myself and I found that I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like internal affairs, when you make a complaint, should not they should not be doing this error, like your own precinct. Like it should be elsewhere that doesn't have a connection, and they should be rotating so you never get that connection.
Yeah, you can't.
And so if you call up an insurance company in this state, you do not go, or you are not forwarded to a call center in the state. You're usually forwarded to a call center that's on the other side of the country or to a area that's far away, because the chance of you knowing that person or them knowing you drastically drops.
Yeah.
So if I'm calling up Geico for my 15-minute or less insurance quote, and I'm not going to get the Geico call center that's right here, I might get the call center that's down south or out west or something like that.
And not only that,
that's because, again, and so so internal affairs, when they're investigating complaints or investigating things, like New York City and Albany, maybe. I mean, well, New York City might
and
need
it does need to be independent. I get it. And also, Geico, they don't get to set their own rules about what their insurance rules are. They have regulations and things that they have to follow. So they have an outside person and a whole, it's different in each state about what they can and cannot do. And those people are not affiliated with Geico. They don't get to make the rules. So when Geico does do something wrong, they investigate and they say, Geico, you did something wrong. It's the same thing. They need an outside,
there's the rules and regulations.
Independent people.
I mean, like each precinct that has it, they should be like crisscrossing. And then there's going to, like every 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay, now there's a new connection.
Yeah, exactly.
And whoever can be in charge of you could probably set up an AI system that will do that pretty easily at this point now. And so you can say every 2 years. So then like this precinct and that internal affairs doesn't get coddly with each other. Yeah. And there's
Well, they shouldn't even be affiliated with law enforcement. Like your job is to keep all these people in check. That's what you do. Like the FCC regulates things.
Time out. Here's the thing. The problem with saying that it shouldn't be police that police their own police is, I think, is a misstep, because they're going to know the cases and the overall context of things much better
I
than a
so.
layperson, or even somebody who's studied it but never practiced it.
No, I think that there needs to be a special outside force, because again, you get the problem of, well, I investigated myself and I didn't find anything wrong with what I did.
Yeah, but that's
so if you're a law enforcement person, you're already biased.
Yeah, but you're not getting I mean, that's the thing. Like, that's not necessarily what I'm meaning. What I'm saying is, if you have one precinct over here, that precinct should not be investigating its own officers because of there's probably a relationship there. But if you have a different precinct investigating the matter, then after the investigation is done, it can go to a verification party and they can double check things, but you provide the context and the notes from this particular precinct that was checking into the complaint from another precinct. Right. And then that way the final person would be able to say, okay, that is acting accordingly. There's no we agree with them, or it can raise a flag that says, this doesn't seem right. We need to do and launch our own investigation. I think something like that would be a little bit easier, because then all you have to do is literally say, okay, our IA team is not going to be investigating our area anymore. It's going to investigate Oklahoma, somewhere in Oklahoma. Okay. And then, you have the Oklahoma is now doing somebody in Nebraska, and Nebraska is doing somebody in Idaho. And you just have these different places that aren't connected with each other. Being able to do that. But
I think it just needs to be an independent body, because you're already biased. And it's the same thing with that person who, it's the same reason why the other officers that sat there and watched that guy squish the person's neck, what was his name, George? Mm-hmm. The same Floyd, reason, Now, from what I understand, 2 of those guys had only been on the job for like 4 days, right? So can you imagine you have a guy who's supposed to be training you and you're watching him, and even though in your head you might be like, what, that doesn't look good. That guy is getting his look, he's saying he can't breathe. But just that you don't want to put your superior, it was a perfect storm of crap. Yeah. So the case is, again, like, well, I don't want to say anything here, because this guy's supposed to be training me. He's my superior. And there's already a bias where us outside people are like, oh my God, that's egregious. Not only did that guy squish his neck, well, why didn't those guys do anything? Yeah. It's real easy
it's that whole mentality thing that when you get into it, you don't necessarily know. And
for sure.
I mean, from, looking back at it and kind of doing like a Monday morning quarterback scenario,
for sure.
I mean, you can see at that point, but sometimes as things are unfolding, you may not even see what's happening right in front of you.
Yep.
And it's hard to say. I mean, let's be real.
Yeah.
That was absolutely insane how he handled that situation, and he deserves anything he gets thrown at him. Because that is just not somebody who should be out in the force. That's not somebody who should be out living.
That's what happened to me over the past week. So what I was watching is a lot of protesters who were calm, and that's all great. And I never understood protesting, because to me, like, there's a system and there's checks and balances, and we have attorneys and things, and we have a law process. And that's the way for me, that I think you're supposed to get things done, is like, if you want change, there's legal channels to be able to do that. And you may never get things changed. Some things are just the way that they are, and you can be upset about it all you want. But I'm sure that if you want to affect change, there's other ways to do that. That's how I felt about Occupy Wall Street. Remember Occupy Wall Street? I thought, like, okay, here's a whole bunch of people that are in all these Wall Street buildings and in front of at Wall Street. Like, do they really think that these bankers are just going to come walking out of the Wall Street buildings going,
you're right.
you
Nope.
got us? Yeah. So, but the way to affect change, which a lot of them were doing, was they had people who had lawyers and they were scheming up plans
Well,
of how to affect
What do you think
change.
the civil rights movement was?
Right.
Those were a lot of protests
Yeah.
that elevated the
Right.
black community within America
Right.
to be able. That's why you had the
Right.
Civil Acts rights.
Yeah,
and,
and
bills
that
passed
those protests where
and
the
things
real
like that.
change came is where they were making laws and they went
Yeah.
through legal channels to
But
start regulating.
it started
the industry.
with protests.
Sure
and
did.
it started with people.
I would
taking
never
a
wanna
stand,
take
and it
that right
started-
away.
And
Yeah.
it started with and the reason why you don't understand a protest is because you probably have never felt a way where you have felt so violated that
I didn't until this week.
somebody has taken away or limited you
Right.
in a particular way or about a belief that you hold
Right.
that is near and dear.
Yeah.
And because you haven't had that, that's why you probably don't understand
Well,
it.
I understand protesting and I believe in the right to it. I think if you want to stand out there at 4:00 in the morning with a sign in a public space that says, I disagree with this, great. And I'm glad we have that right. Personally, it's not that I
riots,
don't
though, on the
understand
other
it.
hand-
Well, this is what happened to me this week or last week. I'm watching all of these people who are taking away from the peaceful protesters and doing damage. And in fact, a lot of it was like there's peaceful people here and the rioting is happening over there because they're just a bunch of assholes that had been home for 3 months and then saw an opportunity to get
And I
free
think,
stuff.
and the reason why I think that this spread beyond and went global, because
sure.
I mean, there is police reform that needs to be happening.
And racism
but
is real.
I mean, that was just the final, that was the straw that
was.
broke the camel's back.
For sure.
That was after a 3-month long journey
Yep.
of people not knowing what the fuck is happening,
Yep.
not knowing if there was any end in sight or
Oh, the
not.
perfect storm.
And I mean, if this happened, if that happened in Minneapolis today, and let's say we never had the pandemic,
Right.
we
Oh,
never had Corona,
there'd be protests, but it
you would see
wouldn't be global.
protests. You may see some riots, but it would not be
It
anything
probably would have
like
just
it is
been in
today.
that city. I don't even.
No, you'd probably see it. You'd probably see it in Charlotte.
When
You'd
it
probably
came
see
to
it in-
Buffalo, I knew like, wow.
No,
Buffalo.
Buffalo. There was a
Wow.
protest in Buffalo when I think it was when Ferguson happened.
Oh, really?
I think there was protests in Buffalo. I think it was when Ferguson happened a few years ago. I think that there was something here, but it was like it wasn't wasn't as quick. It was like
We
it
didn't
was either
have
a few days or a
I
week
can never
later.
remember damage where people actually damaged.
There were like a couple windows that broke at that
Really?
point.
Wow,
but it
I
wasn't,
didn't remember that.
It wasn't anything like this. But the thing is, the reason why it blew up so much and so much bad is because, again, the media in our country is overwhelmingly powerful at how they convey their messages, how they manipulate what people are watching is beyond amazing, because you look and you see, you're seeing all these news stations, every single one, they're either showing falsified data, they're either showing falsified pictures and claiming it's a different story, and they're building into this fear and uncertainty and unknown.
Yep.
And again, we all thought, okay, 2 weeks. 2 weeks, if we stay home or whatever, we should be good. Then it went to a month. Then it went to another month. Then it went to continuing on. And it's like, am I ever going to work again? Am I going to get out of the house? Am I going to be able to are things going to get back to normal? All I want to do is just go out to a bar, have a couple of drinks, see my friends, hang out and have a good time. Am I ever going to do that? No, we don't know. So you're getting all of this crazy, unfortunate timing of things happening. And then you're seeing, we could open, but we're going to extend it another 2 weeks. We're going to, and it's like, man, I don't have any money coming in. I'm burning through. I don't want to get this. I mean, when you walked outside because of the media and you went to the grocery store during the pandemic, when everything was locked down, did you go in there and like, did you breathe a little different when you were in there, even with a mask on? Did you like look at somebody and say, oh my God?
Way worse than that. But it wasn't because of the media. It was because I took biology and I love science. I love all this stuff and I understand how things work. This is a whole different subject that I decided that I'm going to skip right over it, because at this point, the virus might be around for 2-3 years. We might have to live with it, but the actual really horrible effects of this killing people could be around for 2 or 3 years or 4 years. And that, I don't know if it's anything like the pandemic, the 1917, flu pandemic. It may burn through our society for 2, 3, 4 years. This might be something that doesn't go away, and we just have to live with it. Who knows? We don't know, right?
And I decided that many unanswered questions that we just don't know.
I decided that I have a lot to say about things that are real, the way that people are reacting to things, and the things that people should do and shouldn't do. But I decided that this kind of podcast, we're more talking about the current events of the police, and I do want to get back to that. If you want to do a podcast on the coronavirus, I have a lot to say about it, I hear a lot of things that I want to correct for people.
Yeah, but I don't think we need to at this point. I
decide I'm not going to do it. Because
it's not going to be.
There's going to be people, no matter what I say, I can say, here is the data. This is things that we actually know.
Everything.
They're not going to even. It's going to go right over people's heads. And people are sick of it, I think.
Yeah, that's and I don't. That's why I don't even want to talk about it right now, because we're beyond that. The only thing that I am curious to see is right now, for the last 2 weeks, people are in outside patios and they are packed because everybody wants to go out.
Right.
Okay. 2 weeks ago, all these protests started.
Yeah.
You have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people in a smaller area, and they're all close. And so this is a true test, and the numbers will be coming out starting this week if we're going to see an increase in cases overall or not. And there could be some variances in between it, but this is the only thing I'm actually interested in seeing is the hard data that is going to come because of the last 2 weeks, how things have opened, how things have, like I said, people are out. Every patio I see, they are packed. All the makeshift patios I see are packed with people. Yeah. And when you're sitting, nobody's wearing a mask. You don't have to wear a mask at that point. Right. But when you get up, that whole thing is all just weird too. But then when you have all of the massive amount of people in all these different cities with the protests and even parts of the riots and that, where people are getting all close and that, this week is actually going to be that 2 week period now where we haven't seen a big increase except for some areas. Whether this is, whether it's correlated or not, I don't know, because they don't give you that specific set of data, unfortunately. So some states have had some increases, but it hasn't been much to worry about.
No, it's not.
But like I said, this week will really tell if this is going to cause problems
I don't think it is.
Longer period or not. And being that it's 2 weeks starting now, we've had the 2 weeks where it says it's up to 2 weeks where something could happen. So we're at the fringe end of that initial start. And if things are still continuing to decline, I think that's a good thing. And I think that we can see that, all right, well, we can start moving forward a little bit quicker in terms of how to handle it. Now, Could this be something where the sun and the heat have some sort of impact on it? They still don't necessarily know.
Right.
And we probably won't know at least until the fall time
it's killing me.
if there's
It's
a real
killing me,
second
Chris.
wave. But the thing that I have, so I know you don't pay attention to the stock market, and I think that we got to wrap this up real soon because we're getting to that time. But the thing that, again, the media is the article that I was looking that went all over the place and became viral. It said second wave hits in Florida and like 2 other states. I can't remember what it, and they portray, like, the headline article makes it look like there's a second wave, but it's like there were some more cases over the last like week or so, and it went up a little bit, but it wasn't like
so
spiking
that's
or
the real
anything.
thing. Was there 5 new cases, or was there 700 new cases, or was there 10,000 new cases? But we got way off time. Yeah, I have a lot. I'm with you on the media. It's a bunch of bullshit. And when you really look into things, you're like, oh, okay. And I have a lot to say. I can clarify so much for people who don't even understand why, don't know why they did this. Why do I have to do that? Why do they make these decisions? I can lay it out logically and probably explain it to where
but you're
even
still going
people
to have
would
a
understand.
lot of people that are going to
and they're just
disagree
like,
with you.
I don't, and not even
So-
disagree. They're just not going to hear it.
And
but
and
going
I don't
back to the police that we were talking about, what happened to me was I started watching videos of the riots where there's a bunch of assholes breaking into stores, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, you're setting your own message. You're just ruining your own message, right? I'm mad at those people.
But here's the one thing I think you really should step back on when you say you're ruining your own message, because the people who are protesting and we're doing it peacefully, and the people who are rioting, they're seeing an opportunity to take advantage of the protest itself. So these bricks mysteriously showing up in these cities.
Well, you talk about the media, there's another bunch of bullshit.
But, well, yeah, but what I'm saying is, like,
yeah.
these things that are happening, and then, you're talking like Antifa, and Antifa has nothing to do with Black Lives Matter.
No.
And the protest.
Antifa is not even a thing. I didn't even know that until today. Like, I didn't understand that Antifa is not like a thing with a leader and someone commanding like what they say it is. Antifa is an ideology. I didn't even know that, which ironically uses oppression and violence to protest oppression and violence, which is fascism.
Yeah.
Like, how ironic is that?
But, well, you know how I think we've talked about this before when we were talking about the left and right and kind of just giving a very, very small base. Yeah. And you have on either end, you have the far fringe left and the far right. But it in actuality, it's like a circle, because it goes back around where their ideologies are the same exact thing. It's just against each other.
Yeah.
So it's like the rest of the world is chilling over on this side, mostly in the middle. But these groups of people over here are pretty much the bullshit artists all over the place who have the same exact goddamn thing that they're doing, just directed at each. And it's like,
what happened.
So, but it's. Yeah, I mean, going back, like, it's absolutely necessary that changes do need to happen.
Yeah, well, that's what I was
think,
saying. It was like, I'm watching all these protesters who, you're right, the protesters they have a great message. Most of them were peaceful. And then it turns out you have some assholes, or maybe they hung out too long and things did turn violent, right?
Yeah, but
or then there's other
you also
parts
have
where
heightened situations.
Yep. So
on
then
both sides where if you have people yelling at cops, even like "fuck you," and and again,
that's where I was going with it. So
you have somebody who one person who does it can escalate into an entire block.
Yeah. Well,
of
that's where I was
problems.
going with this. So then I'm watching all the asshole rioters. Then there's the protesters. Like, great. And then I'm watching a lot of police who I'm sure if you had some punk kid, it's going, fuck you, you fucking asshole. And you're a human being. and you're standing there and you've got a billy club and you've got a bunch of weapons and you take that as a personal attack. You don't understand that that person who's yelling at you, they see you as a figure, as exactly a label that they don't know that you're Steve with a family, right? You're an authority figure and you're part of the system that they're upset with, but you're taking it as a personal attack. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, I got this kid going, fuck you to me. And then this is my question. There's been so many videos and I got stuck in this rabbit hole where I'm watching a bunch of violence. I'm watching people who are speaking some really good logic, but then I'm watching law enforcement beating up people. And I try to put myself in other people's shoes. I could see where like, okay, you've been out in the hot sun all day. You got this equipment on. Someone's yelling, fuck you. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm just going to beat them, you know? But how do you stop that? How do you get that person to take a step back? And there's tons of them where just like, or even if they're take the guy who got his neck squished. He's handcuffed already. You won.
All right,
get him in the car. How do you stop that?
I think you need to realize something here. And that is we are not as advanced as we want to think we are.
I know, for sure.
And when it comes down to a situation that can be fight or flight, your basic human brain is going to take over and it's going to shut off certain parts of your more advanced brain.
Yeah, I get it.
And I think that's the biggest thing is that we have not, I mean, society and social norms and constructs are a very thin veil that when tested are very easily broken. Yeah. And this last few months have shown that. And like I said, this with the fear, with the uncertainty, the unrest of the pandemic, then you have, you know, a blatant disregard for human life, and you act in a manner that you have this labeling police versus police brutality, where you have police versus person.
Yeah.
And
where's the criminals? These people are all criminals. That's what they think.
Yeah. And then you have, though, these things that just let's face it, society has been broken down to its barest the last few months.
For sure.
And so because of that, because people just want to get back to normal and people just want to get back to life how it was before the pandemic and all that, you are and everybody's on edge, everybody's uncertain, everybody's unsure. You have something that happens, people are going to get behind it because I don't know if they're necessarily saying it's police. I think they're just seeing authority.
Oh, for sure.
You're seeing government officials. Yeah. You're seeing governors. You're seeing the president.
Taking the brunt force of
everybody.
Everything. Yeah, for sure.
And I think most of the entire protests, I mean, no, I don't want to say it that way because I don't want to take away from the movement that Black Lives Matter is trying to do. But the reaction that everybody are having, I think, is fueled by them seeing all of these authority figures saying, stay home, be scared, wear a mask, don't do this, don't do that, wash your hands, blah, 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 and just beating you in the fucking head with it over and over and over, when people, again, are already beaten down with it because they've heard it 19 ways in the last hour.
Right.
And we've heard it for 3 months. So and I think with this last couple of weeks, because of how things have shifted in terms of people are gathering, people are getting more, together, and there's that shift there. I think that if this week you don't see spikes in these areas, especially say like Minneapolis, where that was the bulk of where people were protesting, then and other large gatherings like in LA and all these large cities that had that, then if you don't see that happening, I think then, like I said, we can start getting things back to a more normal situation, from still taking into account that you want to be safe and healthy, but you should be healthy against all possible diseases or sicknesses because they all have a possibility of infecting you or, having a severe case or death. And I mean, I think we all need to just realize that we also need to take care of ourselves better too. And
for sure.
I think to solve or not solve, but at least move forward in terms of, how things have interacted the last couple of weeks with people. I think we need to actually have more discourse, and we need to have people sitting down and talking, and we need to, instead of having arguments or 30-second sound bites like the news, I think people need to sit down, have discussions,
Right.
and then build off of those discussions and talk about it and have this interaction and say, okay, well, look, you're black, you grew up in this neighborhood. I don't understand that.
Right.
Tell me more about it.
Well,
let me understand it.
Yeah. I get you. I'm totally
And-
with you. And there's a lot of people, I know there's a lot of places that do that. One thing I was thinking about, you shot a weapon before, right? That's where you get training. Okay. One thing that occurred to me when I shot a weapon was when I aim that weapon at the target, I realized that I'm shooting something deadly, that if that was an animal or a person, I'm killing that thing. Right. And I'll
That's
never
one of the
forget-
realities you have to face when
Right.
having or owning a weapon. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
So did you get when you're shooting a target? Now, I'm not an avid shooter. You know how I feel about weapons. I watched Tiger Belly the other day with Bobby Lee, and he said that his problem is that he wishes everything was like Star Trek, and I couldn't believe it.
Phaser.
Yeah, but not with phasers. Like in Star Trek, there's no money, and people are about culture, and they listen to music and art and things like that, right? Because there's no money. Things are made by replicators, and in my head, like, and the bigger thing is that the world is at peace of Earth. Their enemies are like aliens from other places.
Well,
but
that's
people
'cause-
on Earth they don't war with each other. Everyone gets
All
along.
right, I'll give you another example from a movie called Independence Day. And
Yeah.
like when they were launching the assault, it's because they found the way to discard or to take away their guard. When who was Bill Pullman?
Yeah.
When he was giving the speech and it was going around the world, he
Yep.
said, "We are no longer about nation or
Right.
nationality. We are no longer about race. We are no longer
Right.
about anything. We are humans."
Yeah.
And today is not just the U.S.'s independence.
Yeah.
It's the world's because we're fighting for our life. So it's more about a common enemy.
Right.
And so that's one
And
of the
for
big
me,
things,
well,
too.
that's why I don't-
If you have a common enemy,
Yeah.
you can really, get a whole bunch of different viewpoints and people and,
Yeah.
and ideologies together because they're fighting the same enemy because it's a common enemy. So
Right.
that's how you're getting a lot of people who may not see eye to eye, who will stand together in the face of an adversity because of that common enemy.
Right. And for me, because I wanted everything to be Star Trek where we have replicators that make food and everyone gets along.
Yeah, but we're
I
not
never
there yet.
saw that. Of course not. And I lived in a fantasy world for a long time. But I never felt that I need to carry a weapon to protect myself from another human being when I go out of the house. But there's a lot of people who think that way. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. I better carry this weapon with me. And that's why weapons never made sense to me. And I never had any, but I have shot a weapon before.
That's
and
a
I,
firearm.
Yeah. I
'Cause
remember.
a weapon is meaning it's an offensive term
Okay.
in terms of you're using something against another person
All right.
or animal in an offensive way.
Okay, that makes
So
sense.
I just want to
All right.
because most of the time when you're talking,
I couldn't think of it's a firearm.
like there's certain things where you want to clarify. That's one thing I just want to clarify
Awesome,
is
yeah.
because it's a weapon would be an action.
Sure.
Like you're doing something using another means
Yeah, that's
in
legit.
an offensive way instead of a defensive way.
get it, yep.
So it's I just other than
Good terminology. Yeah, I'm glad. So I couldn't think of the word. So firearm, right? And a few times in my life, I see the appeal, right? I get why people would like to shooting targets is fun, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized with the AR. The reason that I was really conscious of it is because the AR is the weapon that a lot of the mass shooters use.
That is wrong.
Well, they do. I mean, people have used it, right? So
People have used it, but that most of the time, most
it depends on who it is, but
most shootings period happen with handguns. Most.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
AR-15s, they are used in a very small percentage,
Right.
And I mean, you can look up all the FBI statistics and data on that because
I'm sure.
they publish all that.
Yeah, there's tons of handguns.
And so the handgun is, because it's the most concealable.
Right.
You know, shotguns and rifles are very hard to conceal.
Yeah.
And so it's, you know, it's tougher in that aspect to be able
I remember
to do
that
stuff like
the
that.
AR seemed to be popular, where the kids who thought that they were going to go like do a school shooting, the AR was their weapon of choice. So I remember thinking that like this is a gun that people, and you're probably right, that's probably just a skewed statistic. You know, they could go into school and kill a bunch of people with a handgun. I get it, but that's what the association I made was like. Wow. This weapon has been used to kill a lot of people. And I remember shooting that weapon at a target and thinking, you know, this could be used to kill someone. If that was a person, that target was a person, you're conscious that you're killing someone, right? So I don't know if you remember a few years ago, there was like a black man who was running from the police, from a specific cop.
Oh, and threw the gun?
Well, he shot him while he was running away and then tried to plant the gun on him. And someone had a video.
Yeah. Is this the one where the cop threw the gun at him and said, "Oh,
I think so."
Okay, yeah.
So
that was a big deal too.
Right. So that guy, right now, there's a clear example of a person who got upset that the person was running away, shot him while he was running away. And it's just, you know that if you put in that shoes, they're just angry, you know, and you have to know that if you're aiming a weapon and shooting someone, that either you're going to seriously hurt them or probably kill them. And, I'm mad that this person didn't do what I thought that they were supposed to do. Definitely was supposed to be arrested, but then I'm going to lash out. How do you prevent that? Do you think that training?
I've told you how you can prevent that. First, every time a cop comes in, what's the difference between a cop and a criminal?
That's great.
One bad decision.
Yeah, that's
by the way, that was Fast and the Furious 4.
Oh, is it really? That's a great.
So if people don't know that, it was spoken by Mia. I forget what her name is,
for sure.
But she said that to Paul Walker's character. And so it was, it's what made, I think that should be the cop, a cop motto, because it's very easy to be in the moment and to do something that you could say, I can cover it up later. Mm-hmm. But I think the biggest thing is when it comes down to it, having that type of mental health with a therapist and breaking it down and working through all of your experiences as an officer, and you know, the job. And then, you know, if you got problems on the job, you can take that home, and you're going to have problems in the family, and you're going to have problems with your kids, and you're going to have problems with your friends. And it can escalate and snowball out of control, where one day you're going to wake up and you're going to be like, fuck, what the fuck happened?
Yeah.
But if we had this mental health throughout, or help throughout the entire time, mm-hmm. we wouldn't have, I don't think, nearly the amount of problem. Then on top of it, right. Then on top of it, being in the community, if that officer was out in the community, and I don't know if I don't know anything beyond that video.
Yeah, I don't.
So I don't know if that person was a model officer before that. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just making an inference.
For sure.
I'm inferring right here.
Yeah.
But if that person was in the community more and knew the community and knew the people in that community, and, you know, was an advocate and a help, and somebody who's working towards the betterment and keeping the peace, mm-hmm. I don't think you would have stuff like that as well either. But because you're going to have the pride of that community to make it safer.
Yeah. And
I think with the experiences, I mean, with that mental health, either that would have come out saying that, no, you are not fit to be out,
Right.
or you need time off, or we worked through what you needed to work through, and you are okay to be out on on the street.
Or
And
do you think exposure training might help? For example, if you're terrified of spiders, right? What exposure training
think-
does is maybe they'll get.
no, I know what it is, but
Yeah.
I don't want to get into the. I just want to answer. I think because we got to wrap it up.
Okay.
I think that exposure training works for some people, but it doesn't work for other people. And I think that a good therapist or a good psychologist or somebody would know whether that would work for that particular person or not. And I think that...
Well, that's okay. Maybe I should be more broad. Do you think that instead of training people where you give them a firearm and you say, there's the bad criminal with the weapon,
Well, first of all,
and wants to shoot you, practice shooting them, but you never treat that scenario doesn't happen very often, where you're going to have to fire your service weapon as in self-defense. What most likely is going to happen is the other scenario where you're encountering a person who doesn't want to go to jail and is going to run away, or might be aggressive towards you, but you never get the training of de-escalation and talking. You only learn how to fire your weapon.
First of all, let's not go there because we don't know what the training's like.
Well, that's what I would like to learn.
So I don't even want to touch that, only because we can't say for sure if they've received that type of training or not. As far as I know, reaching for your weapon is a last resort.
Sure.
And at least from what I've heard in training, I can't verify that either.
No, I get that.
And so I can't even, like, we can't answer that or even talk about that because we just don't have the knowledge for that.
Well, let's say that even they do train. Let's say they do train. Do you think more scenario training where it's like, look, even though this person is upset, they might be calling you an asshole and they might be trying to run away.
Scenario training is good in aspects of getting like a muscle memory down.
Yeah.
But again, when it comes to practicality and the events that are unfolding as they're happening, you don't necessarily know how you're going to react.
Yeah.
Even though you could have gone through it in a test scenario or a simulation multiple times.
Yeah.
Because each time is going to be a little bit different.
Oh, sure.
The stakes are going to be a little bit different. Your mindset is going to be a little bit different. I think that scenario training is a great tool. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's going to be the answer.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, I think most of the time, if you're in the community more, actually, one question I have a last question for you that I've heard about this. And I've heard somebody say this, and when I heard it, I'm thinking, oh, that's an idea. And this is that police should have 3 rounds, rubber bullets in their service pistol as the first 3, and then it would go to regular hollow points that they would be using after. Do you think that is a better scenario or not?
No, I don't. I definitely don't.
Okay. Well, I heard that and I said, I think that's an interesting point.
It is.
And I'd want to talk to people more so and figure out, is that a truly good idea or not?
I don't think so.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's an idea.
I have a reason why. Okay. It's exactly what you said. The worst case scenario, we'll use the pull someone over example. And that guy starts firing through the door at you. Mm-hmm.
You got to go.
You
through
have
the
a
3.
split second. Yeah, you have 3 rubber bullets, right? And even though you could probably go bang, 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 and shoot real quick, I think that if it is a life and death scenario, they're already behind the 8 ball per se. Mm-hmm. I don't think that. And also, we've also seen cases where there's a stun gun and a service weapon. The stun gun is used, and then they also have their service weapon, which they've killed people after the stun gun didn't work. So you could make the comparison that stun gun is the rubber bullets, right? I have a question for you is along the same lines is the projectile guns that shoot the big rubber bullets.
Like beanbags?
It's almost like a golf ball, but only rubber. They're about this big. Do you think my issue is that if you're upset and those people are the other now, they're the criminal, and well, I've got this thing and that person is not doing what I think that they should be doing, even though, they're a United States citizen, they may not be doing anything wrong. You're just upset that they're there in general, and you may aim for the eye, even though you're not supposed to do that, or you aim for the crotch. I don't know what we can do in these scenarios to stop this sort of thing from happening.
Okay, the biggest thing is...
I don't have the answer. I don't know what to
do. First of all, you can't say where they're aiming because you don't know. I know the people that have been hit in the eyes, that have been hit in the junk, that have been hit in areas that... I mean, the thing is, though, from the time that you were pointing it and pulling the trigger,
right,
from the time that the trigger's pulled to the point of contact... that person could have moved.
Yeah, I get it. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about there's plenty of examples where people are blatantly getting shot, and what do we do about that? I don't know what to do.
But again, you can't say that they're aiming at that because that is not. You don't know if that's the truth or not.
Yeah,
and I don't want.
Well, that's what happened to me this week. Is I'm watching all of these videos.
Yes, but
I'm like, oh man,
But some of those videos are altered. And some of the videos are altered. There was a I think it was a picture or something where there was a news organization that everybody was apparently sitting there peaceful, and they put in a person with a rifle.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure they did the same thing with your Chaz thing that you were talking about, where I only read a brief article about the autonomous zone, but apparently one news outlet photoshopped one of the images that they used and then used another image of a prior protest that didn't have anything to do with this autonomous zone. And we're presenting that as reality. They're all
doing it. That's the thing.
And now you're right with the deep fake videos, right? Sure, maybe some of the videos that I was exposed to over the past 2 weeks were possibly doctored, but when we see all of these other videos of reporters getting blatantly shot, and all these things like how that, can we solve this problem? I don't have the answers.
I told you. It's an ongoing solution.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think those things need to start happening. I think there needs to be the reform in terms of how police are brought in through the academy. I think that there has to be a different type of training altogether. Yeah. I think that they should not, first of all, if you're going to be on the front lines of a riot force or anything like that, you need to have specific training. You need to be able to have the de-escalation strategies first. And, again, I think the big thing is you need to be able to sort through these different scenarios and your interactions as an officer throughout your career, because if you start here and you have these types of high induced days where it's multiple days for your career, and then all of a sudden, boom, you have this huge protest that's happening, and you think you see somebody who's pulling out a cell phone, and you think it's a gun. I mean, yes, I get it. You have split seconds to make some decisions, but you also need to realize, if people are being peaceful and people are not causing problems, and yet you are instigating things or elevating things
that's the worst part about it is they got upset about the protests about police brutality, so they did more police brutality to try to try to mitigate the police brutality.
Let's just face it. All around,
it's a horrible situation.
Let's just say, all around, it's a stressful situation on everybody that was there. Yeah. The police themselves, because they want it to be peaceful. They're behind peaceful. There were a lot of cops and a lot of people who said what that dickhead did. Yeah. He deserves whatever he gets. And they stand with, the people saying that was an absolute wrongful way to attack somebody.
And it's the people who are backing that guy. Those are the problem. Those are the people that have to get out of there. Just get out of there.
Not only that, you also have the stress that everybody's been under over the last 3 months that culminated into this situation and this whole thing. And like I said, I think, yes, part of it was probably against police, a good chunk of it. I also think that the way people reacted and the amount of people reacted behind this is because it is against authority,
100%,
including your governors, including your state,
or just something to do. I have a reason that the government cannot tell me to stay home. I have a reason to actually break that rule and get out of here. I get it. One thing that I do want to mention, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
I have one thing after that, but go
ahead. One of the greatest things that I saw out of this, and I was looking for this article. I hope that I have it saved at home. It was either a reservist, and when I tried to find it again, I couldn't find it, but it was either a reservist or a National Guard person, but it wasn't a local law enforcement. It was somebody had been called in, either reservist or National Guard. So what his tactic was to listen to the protest. First thing he did was he came out, he introduced himself, said, "Hi, this is my name." Shook the hand.
I know what you're talking about. I've heard. Yeah.
Yep. So then he said, "What can we do to keep things peaceful? You have the right to protest. We support your right to protest. We're not here for you. We're here because of the riots to protect businesses, etc." And one thing is that once he put a name to himself, and he became a human being to the protesters. Then he asked, "Well, what can we do?" They said, "Well, we don't want you here. Back off." So that's what they did. Any person who was in some kind of position of authority or law, they backed off and they essentially disappeared out of view so that the protesters didn't feel like there's someone there waiting for them.
Yeah. And it's that stress.
So the next day, same thing. "Hi, this is my name, blah, blah, blah. You did a great job last night. There was peaceful protest. We support you. What happened to that guy was horrible. And we're also here to support your right to protest. We're glad you have the right to protest. What can we do this time?" And same thing, just back off. So that kind of de-escalation tactic where you introduce yourself, you make yourself a human being, you pull back, you let people protest like they wanted to, you're not confrontational.
You said it when you said reservist or National Guard is because they received 100% different training than the officers out there.
Yep.
They don't receive the same training.
Exactly.
And that's one of the things. Like I said, you have to change the training that officers receive. And so, again, if you have a peaceful protest met with police in riot gear because of the possibility of riot, the stress on both sides is going to be high and it's going to escalate. Whether that remains peaceful or not, it's going to be high. So, there's a lot of changes, and we're not going to continue going around the bush because we've already established everything. I think those few things could be really implemented and could be implemented quick. And I think they can, especially getting out into the community, that can start now, where officers can get out in the community, talk to people, meet people that they're protecting, understand the community a little bit better, especially if they don't live in that community. Yeah. Because some don't. And a lot of places have a requirement that you have to be in the community that you're protecting, but there are some times that aren't. And then, getting in the right type of training for different situations, then also getting in the ability to have these therapists who are able to really focus on each individual officer and to help them get help, to get them helped to the point where they can de-escalate their own mind. They can, prioritize things. They can get things fixed. They can work on PTSD. They can do all this stuff. And I think going forward, that would be a much better thing, along with certain reforms that they can do.
Yeah.
But, you know, defunding police departments and, you know, dissolving police departments just is not going to work.
Yeah, I don't know enough about. I've read a lot of different views on that, but I don't understand enough to understand what they mean. But I don't have the law enforcement experience, and
Yeah, neither of us do.
But even
So
I
we
don't
can sit
even
here and speculate all day long.
I don't even know someone who can try to. You could never explain someone's experience. I get that, but I don't even have someone who can explain their viewpoint to me. But I do have someone that I know very well who's a social worker, and she's 5'2" and a short female. I can only imagine the things that she has to deal with on a daily basis, especially when she was first starting out. Like, she'd have to go to the worst places and deal with the worst people you can imagine. People who are locking their children up, beating their children. She would come home and just tell me these stories that he couldn't tell me names or specifics, but tell me her experiences. I don't know how you would even mentally
and that's another thing. Like,
so
social workers get
worldview-
burned
oh,
out
man.
in like a couple of years because of what they have to go through.
Right.
And you know, I mean, that's another thing.
So just like term limits,
that
do you
type
think
of
there should
person
be
needs
term
to.
limits for being like in this scenario where you're dealing with these people all the time? Like you could only do 2 years of like being on the street and dealing with the criminals. Now
like
you go
I said, no,
do this.
because there many cops out there are good people who are protecting. The only difference is, and they do it for their 40 plus years or whatever it might be that they're on the force, and they get off, they retire, they lived a great life, and they did great at their job. But I think it's more the fact, like I said, everybody handles things differently. Everybody sees things differently, experiences things differently. When you're a cop, you're dealing with a lot of crazy stuff. I
can't imagine.
And I wish I could talk about my friend who had a very crazy experience a couple weeks ago, and who's an LEO. And I don't want to say that situation because all I know is I was there for him. He was able to vent out. I told him he should probably try to use a service that he can talk to and get that through, and have somebody who's trained to move on and deal with that. I know nothing bad is going to happen because of the type of LEO he is. But it's, I mean, mental health is key when it comes to all of this stuff. And I think if we can have those things put in place, I think you could see a very big difference. But also, like I said, dealing with being in the community and you know, taking pride in working in that community, keeping peace in that community and all that. And then I think you're going to see the people of that community look at officers in a different light.
Oh, for sure.
And I think that's going to help raise the ability of people to have respectful interactions between the both. And then, I mean, the last thing that needs to happen is we really do need to look at impoverished communities and how we can make them better, because unfortunately it's like you see the same crime and the same crime stats happening year after year after year with no change.
It's so weird. They don't have any money, and then there's all this crime. I just can't figure it out.
But it's the cycles, and it's, you know, I mean, if we improve the community centers, if we improve the outreach, if we improve, you know, all there's now that conversation is much bigger and much huger, because there's a lot of different things that can be done, can be in place. But it's you know, it's going to start, it has to start somewhere. And with the whole, like I said, the whole police thing, I think that's a good start, at least in terms of some of the changes that can happen, because the one you could change today, it won't cost the department anything. The next, the training changes, yeah, that's going to cause some different differences because you're going to have a different training. But once you instill that different training, maybe that same amount of time can in the academy can cover that training, having ongoing training. But then I know the therapist's side of thing is going to be a much bigger situation because it's going to be a little bit more costly because you're dealing with mental health. But mental health is very important, especially because of that whole mind mentality of you versus me and me versus you when it comes down to it. I'm the cop, you're the criminal. I'm pulling you over, blah, blah, blah. You know, I'm the Uber driver, you're the shitty passenger. You know, I'm this person, you're that you know, I'm the bouncer, you're the dickhole drunk. You know, we got to remember that's not necessarily the case. Like every time I start driving
We're all
Uber
still
and
humans.
Lyft, every time I start driving Uber and Lyft, and all the videos that I post when there's a crazy occurrence that happens, not all the time, but most of the time, or different times throughout the videos, I say, look, this doesn't happen on every ride. You can't say this is every ride. Most rides happen perfectly fine. Nothing. There's nobody that talks. It's great. I listen to my music. I make some money. You get to where you're going. It's great. Sometimes we have great conversation. Sometimes people are assholes. Sometimes things get out of control. But it's a very small and minute amount. And yeah, people are going to be people. People are assholes. But in actuality, if we can just step back, breathe, discuss, open discussions, and have clear discussions that can build off of each other instead of this way for this person, this way for that person, it doesn't work, so they're at odds. No, we gotta evolve the conversation and expand on it. And I think that's going to be the next thing that we need to really focus on is sitting down, listening, and formulating ways to fix many problems that we've seen. And the one good thing about this pandemic is it truly shows how many problems there are in the system. And I think now that we've truly seen some of the problems, and there's more problems that we haven't seen, and there's problems that people won't see, but they're there. And I think now we need to figure out how to fix them, or at least correct them, and then continue correcting them. Because I mean, some things, they're not going to get fixed. There is no clear answer. There's no way to do it. But I think if we work in a way where we can continue to make it better for the majority of all people, then I think you're going to see things improve. And the last thing is stay away from the media, because I mean, it's so
bad. It's so bad. I can't believe it. Like I can't believe that, one of the things that, this is the last thing I have to say, is negative consequences. One of the
which
things
we've said
that,
for an hour now.
Well, no, we didn't really say like, okay.
No, I know. Just make the point.
The in law enforcement, from what I hear, I don't know, but if you keep getting these repeated lawsuits of excessive force, right? You're not paying those lawsuits. That's the city that pays the lawsuit, right? And it's not coming out of your pocket. It's not coming out of your retirement. And maybe they say, well, if it gets bad enough, you're suspended with pay. Like, oh no, I don't have to go out on the street and deal with all the criminals and I get paid. Like, there's not negative consequences. And the way you curb part of this is to start having more accountability. And I hate to say that because everyone, law enforcement is a job, but
hugely, that's true. That's true on everything. I think accountability for your own actions is one of the things that we really need to get back to, because there's somewhere it became acceptable to place the blame on everybody else but yourself.
And that's what I feel like in the media
aspect.
Yeah. So how is it okay for these companies, their companies?
Well, it's everything.
Yeah. So how is it okay for them
from top to bottom
to knowingly, to blatantly say, okay, I know that this photograph is photoshopped. There's not really a person with a rifle in this Chaz zone that you're talking about. And there's not really a war zone going on there. In reality, there's just a bunch of people who are walking their dogs and it's just like a park. But I'm going to Photoshop a war zone and I'm going to put it on the news so that people think that this is a violent war zone and there's a bunch of these imaginary Antifa people there. There's no, that's just one example, but how do they get away with it if there were negative consequences to where like you're paying millions of dollars if you do this and you're going to be sued out of existence, just like what Hulk Hogan did to what Hulk Hogan sued. Who did he sue out of existence? What company was that?
I don't know, because it was like defamation though.
Yeah, but if they would stop it if they knew that they couldn't get away with it, or even a small thing like the person who published the article.
Again, that's coming down to taking responsibility for your own actions. And again, so many people place blame and say, "Oh, it wasn't me."
Shame on them.
But the thing is, it's not one aspect. It's not one. It's everything.
It really is.
Person does not every majority, and I'm going to say a massive majority of people do not take responsibility for their own actions.
No, they don't.
They will blame everything else before they will say, you know what, I fucked up, I'm sorry.
Yep.
And
or even just
deal with the consequences.
Even internally, like, well, this happened and it was my fault. Won't do that again. They're like, no, and I mean, I think everyone does that to a degree. Like, well, I know for me personally, when I was younger,
it's part of the ego.
Yeah, if this didn't happen and that person didn't do this, then I wouldn't be here. But also, I did have a culpability in that, and that's where you say mental health, but I hate to say this, but a lot of 12-step programs can help people too, because that is one of the steps, is taking inventory and taking account for your actions. I think everyone should have to at least learn what a 12-step is and how it works, because they help me. Like, I've done 12-step. I did a couple different ones now, and I didn't learn how to quit doing this habit or do that habit. That was a side effect. But exactly what you said. You learn how to take accountability for your actions. And I said this at Cards the other night. Said all the time, we get to do with your opposable thumbs.
Yeah, but that's not even the same thing. Like that connection right there. I'm sorry, that's not the same. It's whether it's a mindful decision or action or whatever it is, I think that people need to be held responsible. I think that it needs to be up and down from top to bottom, because it's politicians. They're probably the instigators behind everything, because they do it. They're the people in charge and in power, and then you have corporations starting to do that, and you see that start trickling down from top CEO all the way down to the lowly totem pole aspects of that company. And then you see it go into personal life, and you see it in the news media, and you see it here and there and everywhere. And sometimes the consequences are going to suck and the problems are going to be an issue. But once you face up and own it, like, I don't know what it's like, how to explain it, but it's satisfying in knowing that it's closed out. There's closure there. It's done. Whatever you thought was going to be fearful, that the consequences may not have been that bad, or the repercussions may not have been that bad. And most of the time, it's not. Most of the time, it's A-okay, and you feel a better peace because you're not lying. Right. You're not, pushing it further and further, and where if it comes back to you, it's going to be worse. You get that closure, you get that peace, you get that mindfulness, and you just feel better because you got it out there, and it makes you a bigger person when you do that.
Right.
And that's something I think we all need to step back on and really focus on helping. But whatever it is, it's a crazy fucking world out there. And I think the biggest thing is we all need to listen to each other. I think we all need to step back, I think we all need to shake hands and realize that, you know, we're all on this earth together, and we need to make it as best as we can for everybody, and just enjoy. So I think you get a quote, and then we'll end on that last quote, which I've been saying twice already, or a couple times.
That's really good.
Go ahead.
Well, we'll do this one. The greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. I mean, maybe that's great for right now, because we, as a species, have taken a gigantic hit all the way around.
The globe, yeah.
Yeah, all the way around the globe. So I think right now, you're right. How we recuperate, reassess what our values are, and move forward after this is a defining moment, I think, in humanity.
Could be, yeah. And I'm going to say it one last time. For all the cops and law enforcement officers out there, what's the difference between a cop and a criminal? One bad decision. So think about that every single time you're out there, and, you know, get out in the community, enjoy, embrace it, be happy. All right. Have a good night, everybody.